As it turned out, Taiko couldn't take it all. Xiao Ran had only inserted 3 bamboo skewers when Taiko couldn't bear it anymore, his face a mess of tears and snot as he begged for mercy. Alas, where was that so-called sense of honor? Compared to our ancestors, huh? For a nation like this, what good would it do even if their weapons were 10 times more advanced? They'd still be beaten and driven away. It was a pity their American daddy had protected this turtle's son back then. Otherwise, this tiny island nation would have long since vanished into the river of history. No matter, their American daddy couldn't come now. No. Even if the Yanks sent over some captain of theirs, he would only be easily beaten down by him. Xiao Ran smiled confidently, but since he had already prepared 5 bamboo skewers, he couldn't let the other 2 go to waste. Thus, amidst Taiko's blood-curdling screams, Xiao Ran inserted the remaining 2 skewers into the seams of Taiko's fingernails. The pain made Taiko pass out, then wake up from the pain, then pass out again. After this repeated several times, he looked as if he'd been fished out of water, drenched in sweat. Xiao Ran called Myo Aena over. "Come on, time to work," he said. Myo Aena walked over gracefully, her devilish figure incredibly seductive. This was a real stunner. Hanyan also made one think of the bedroom. But as bewitching as Han Maisie was, she didn't have this woman's bone-deep, alluring charm, nor the sense of contrast from her intellectual air. Xiao Ran admired her, full of anticipation. He wouldn't be playing by any rules here. Xiao Ran began to ask questions. Myo Aena translated, and Taiko answered weakly. Taiko's answers were halting, but Myo Aena's translation was clear and orderly, making it effortless for Xiao Ran to understand. As expected, Tai International was conducting human experiments focused on bioweaponry. Moreover, they were taking orders from the Yanks and collaborating with their high-tech companies. Before the apocalypse, however, Tai International hadn't managed to produce anything of note. But after the apocalypse began, some of them had evolved in the direction of brain development, turning one person into a veritable supercomputer. After countless calculations by that person, the experiment was finally completed. Human-shaped nuclear weapons. Only now, Taiko naturally had no interest in sharing the results of the experiment with the Yanks, instead planning to use these bombermen as his own weapons to conquer the world. But their experiment had only succeeded half a month ago, and the bombermen they produced were not yet stable. As a result, Xiao Ran had come and wiped them all out in one go, including the brain-powered Esper. All of them were dead. Xiao Ran felt no pity at all. It was better for such an invention to never exist. He would destroy all the computers here later, erasing the experimental data and making everything completely safe. Xiao Ran asked a few more questions, but now that it was the apocalypse, all past wealth had turned to dust. What value did Taiko still have? Kill him. With a thought from Xiao Ran, Taiko was disintegrated to the nano-level. What did that mean? Not even blood remained. He was finer than the invisible dust in the air. Xiao Ran waved his hand, sweeping away the particles that were once Taiko. Now, there was only one little Jap left to deal with. Myo Aena seemed to know what Xiao Ran was thinking. She looked directly at him, her gaze holding not a trace of fear. She was actually afraid of snakes, rats, and all kinds of insects, but she was never afraid of men. She knew men all too well. "Do you want me?" She flashed a captivating smile. "Kneel down and be my slave." TSK, I don't know what kind of men you've met before, but you want me to be your slave? You're dreaming. Xiao Ran laughed, then slung Myo Aena over his shoulder and walked towards the bedroom. How could he possibly let Myo Aena take the initiative? I am the strongest. I am the king, and everything will go according to my script. Myo Aena seemed startled. She bit down hard on Xiao Ran's shoulder and started cursing in Japanese. She wasn't even using Chinese anymore, which meant she was truly anxious and angry. Xiao Ran laughed heartily. This was what he wanted to see. A little Jap woman thought she could handle him, even control him, in her dreams. A few hours later, Xiao Ran stood before the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the city. This building wasn't the tallest, but it was high enough to offer a view of a vast landscape. But now, all was silent and desolate. All he could see was a pure white expanse and lifeless buildings. The scenery was hardly pleasant. He glanced back. Myo Aena was fast asleep. The aftertaste was exquisite. She was truly a stunner. However, he had never expected Myo Aena to still be a virgin. It was too incredible. Taiko was paralyzed from the waist down, so it was understandable that he couldn't perform. But before marrying Taiko, had Myo Aena never had a boyfriend? Or had one, but never did that? Who could resist such a charming woman? Forget it. Why be curious about this? What's the point? With a flash, Xiao Ran's form appeared outside the building, once again searching the huge city. His spatial perception expanded, and no one could escape his senses. He became a butcher, killing everyone he saw. No exceptions. Whether you were good, old, young, man or woman, kill. Xiao Ran wished his spatial perception could cover the entire island nation, ensuring not a single little Jap could escape. Over the course of a full day, the number of Japanese people who died at Xiao Ran's hands was in the tens of thousands. Xiao Ran's expression was cold, completely unfazed. He even felt it was a bit of a pity. If only he had brought Chong. After all, he was just one person, and killing his way across the island nation was a very tedious task. He had pretty much finished killing in Tokyo. In a couple of days, he'd go to Osaka and kill everyone there too. Then he'd go to the first military region to get a nuclear bomb, or at the very least, a large amount of explosives. He would blow up Mount Fuji directly. That would save him a lot of trouble and effort, letting a natural disaster become his butcher's knife. It was decided. He returned to Thai International. By now, Myo Aena was already dressed, her beautiful body wrapped in luxurious clothes, but they still couldn't hide her proud figure. When she saw Xiao Ran, she snorted and turned her head to the side, deliberately pretending not to see him. TSK, TSK. Xiao Ran naturally wouldn't try to coax her with gentle words. Not even Lu Mei and the others had that privilege, let alone a mere Japanese woman. Sundara? No matter, a few more times will fix that. He walked over, slung Myo Aena over his shoulder, and walked out. What are you doing? What are you doing? Myo Aena shrieked. However, she was speaking Chinese, which clearly showed she wasn't truly panicked. So, she was just playing hard to get. Xiao Ran understood this in his heart, but didn't care at all. Whether it was Harita Akane or Myo Aena, he was purely just playing around, following his loins, not his heart. But the taste was truly excellent. He was getting a little obsessed. Xiao Ran arrived in Osaka. Osaka was also a major city in the island nation with a large population, and quite a few people had survived. Coupled with the universal evolution brought by the purple moon, the number of espers here had actually reached 200,000. Xiao Ran began a great massacre. Here, he also encountered 3 others from the top 10 national goddesses. However, their luck was extremely poor. They had been reduced to playthings for the powerful, passed through several hands, and were now ravaged into a pitiful, numbly inhuman state. Xiao Ran naturally didn't want such goods and sent them all on their way. After staying in Osaka for 7 days, there were almost no living people left in the city. Xiao Ran nodded and took Harita Akane and Myo Aena back with him. With his spatial domain expanded, taking 2 people was naturally a breeze. Unlike Harita Akane, who had chosen to submit from the very beginning, Myo Aena, this seemingly bewitching woman, remained wild and untamable. The moment he touched her, she would try to fight him to the death. Although she failed every time, she was unyielding. Xiao Ran found it very interesting. Traveling with the spatial domain was different. It took only half an hour for Xiao Ran to arrive at the first military region. He took the 2 women directly to see Chong Yao. Chong Yao was already used to Xiao Ran's habit of appearing and disappearing like a ghost. He said helplessly, "Next time you show up, can you at least be outside my house? Wait till you to knock on the door." Xiao Ran ignored him, sat down nonchalantly, and said, "Chong, didn't you want to wipe out the island nation?" Chong Yao was first startled, then overjoyed. He no longer cared about the awkwardness of someone showing up in his house while he was halfway through a shower. He quickly said, "You're going to take care of the little Japs?" Xiao Ran chuckled. "I've already gone and killed a round. Here, these 2 are my spoils of war." Only then did Chong Yao glance at the 2 women, an expression of amazement flashing across his face. But that was all. He had never been one to pursue women. His mind was filled with protecting his home and country. If he had any other desire, it was to expand the nation's territory. Now, hearing that Xiao Ran was going to take on the little Japs, he immediately grew excited. "You know, friend, how could you not call me when you're fighting the little Japs?" He looked annoyed. Xiao Ran gestured with his hand. "Didn't I come for you now? I'm planning to do something big, to wipe out all the little Japs." Chong Yao's eyes lit up. "Tell me the details." Xiao Ran nodded. "I'm planning to nuke Mount Fuji." Chong Yao immediately became incredibly excited and slapped his thigh. "Gutsy. Good. I'll go with you on this big job." "No, you can't do this." Myo Aena, who understood Chinese, had resolved to never speak to Xiao Ran again, but now she was so agitated that she grabbed him. "Please, you can't do this." Xiao Ran ignored her and asked Chong Yao, "Do you have a nuclear bomb here?" Chong Yao took a deep breath. "Yes." That was all he needed. Xiao Ran nodded. Take me there later, and teach me how to operate it. No problem. Chong Yao agreed without hesitation. Seeing Xiao Ran ignore her, Myo Aena was so anxious that she broke out in a sweat. She threw her arms around Xiao Ran. Please, please don't do this. I'm willing to be your woman. I beg you, don't do this. Xiao Ran laughed. You're already my spoil of war. What right do you have to make conditions? I'm willing to serve you with all my heart and soul. Myo Aena said anxiously. She was no airhead, but a genuine top student who deeply understood the dangers of detonating Mount Fuji. Not needed. Xiao Ran pushed her aside. If Lu Mei and the others asked him to do something, he might consider it, but a Japanese woman? How is that possible? You're overconfident. You've misjudged your own charm. To Chung, let's go, he said to Chong Yao. Chong Yao nodded first, then said, launching a nuclear missile requires a very complex procedure, and it also needs authorization. Let's go find Secretary Tang first. No need. Xiao Ran waved his hand. Take me to the missile silo. I'll just take it directly. This was no boast. For him, it was truly a small matter. Chong Yao was stunned for a moment. All right, he was going all in too. When it came to fighting the little Japs, it was a must. No, don't. Myo Aena continued to plead. Xiao Ran was hard-hearted. On this matter, he would absolutely not show a shred of softness. The little Japs had to disappear from this world. Chong Yao took Xiao Ran to the armory. It wasn't here, but in a barren mountain more than 50 kilometers away. The nuclear bomb was already poised for launch. This was normal. In times like these, the major powers were more nervous than ever, wary that a nuclear power might throw caution to the wind. So, the nuclear weapons were definitely on high alert. If you hit me, I'll immediately retaliate, and we'll all be screwed. However, in such extreme cold, could the missile's performance be maintained? Xiao Ran didn't care. He had no intention of launching it as a missile. He would take it there directly and manually drop it into Mount Fuji. He teleported down, and with a snap of his fingers, the nuclear missile in the silo entered his other-dimensional space. Done. He returned to the surface and asked Chong Yao, can I just throw this thing directly into Mount Fuji? Chong Yao shook his head. That won't work. It needs to be detonated. How would you detonate it? Xiao Ran asked. Chong Yao chuckled. Take me with you, I'll operate it. Was the Chung afraid he wouldn't bring him along for the fun? Fine, we'll leave right away, Xiao Ran nodded. Wait, let me bring a few more brothers. Everyone should get to see such a beautiful firework, Chong Yao said hastily. Xiao Ran laughed. You think it's easy for me to bring people along? For every extra person, my burden increases. Chong Yao was disappointed, but could only accept it. Who could refuse such an honor as destroying the island nation with his own hands? Don't do this. Please, you can't do this. Myo Aena cried and begged. Xiao Ran paid her no mind. Let's go. He once again used teleportation to travel, but this time with an extra Chong Yao. It was still half an hour. They arrived in the island nation, with Mount Fuji in sight. Let's rest for a day. I'll act tomorrow after my powers recover, Xiao Ran said. Using a nuclear bomb to detonate Mount Fuji would cause absolutely earth-shattering destruction. Xiao Ran would definitely use banishment to withstand the initial shockwave, then use his spatial domain to leave. This way, he could both ensure absolute safety and enjoy the magnificent sight of Mount Fuji exploding. Although Chong Yao was eager to act immediately, he thought about it and held back. That night, Myo Aena desperately tried to assassinate Xiao Ran, but it was useless. After failing, she lay on the ground and wailed. After tomorrow, the Yamato people might disappear from this world. Of course, she had to cry. A night passed. Xiao Ran took Harita Akane and Myo Aena, along with Chong Yao, to Mount Fuji. Xiao Ran, are we going to be finished too? Chong Yao suddenly asked. Are you scared? Xiao Ran asked. Chong Yao laughed loudly. Of course I'm not afraid of death. But if you don't have any life-saving tricks, then get the hell out of here right now, and let me enjoy this honor all by myself. Ha, that's so, Chong Yao. Xiao Ran smiled. Don't worry, I won't die, and neither will you. Chong Yao breathed a sigh of relief. Yet there was still a hint of regret. He really wanted to monopolize this honor. He'd truly be worthy of a place in the imperial ancestral temple. His name would be written in textbooks in the future. Myo Aena, on the other hand, was trembling, her eyes filled with despair. Harita Akane was indifferent, merely looking at Xiao Ran with adoring eyes, completely infatuated. Two women, completely different personalities. Xiao Ran threw out the nuclear bomb. Chong Yao performed a series of operations, then said, all right, it'll detonate in 5 minutes. However, he looked troubled. How to drop this bomb is quite a problem. If we drop it too early, the volcanic magma will burn out the entire detonation system, and it won't explode. But if we drop it too late... Dropping it too late went without saying. It wouldn't be Mount Fuji that exploded, but them. Xiao Ran smiled faintly. No matter, I'll control it. Are you sure you can? Old Cheng looked at Xiao Ran, surprised. How can a man say he can't? Xiao Ran laughed. Just wait. 4 minutes later, Xiao Ran opened his spatial domain and, carrying the nuclear bomb, jumped into the volcano's crater. However, he stopped above the magma, sending the nuke 372 meters deep, but enveloped it with his banishment space to prevent the magma from touching it. He could indeed adjust his domain's position to a maximum depth of over 700 meters, but the maximum range of banishment was only 372 meters. This depth would have to do. Xiao Ran sat cross-legged above the magma. It looked like his ass was on fire, but within the spatial domain, not a single wisp of heat could touch him. The countdown began. 10, 9, 7, 3, 2, 1. Detonation. Xiao Ran immediately withdrew the banishment. With a flash of his body, he appeared on the summit of Mount Fuji, then took Chong Yao and the other two and left, arriving at an altitude of over 300 meters. Then, Xiao Ran banished all 4 of them together. Boom! Just then, a world-shaking roar erupted from within Mount Fuji. The entire mountain trembled, snow flying everywhere. Immediately after, terrifying magma shot into the sky, erupting to a height of over 1,000 meters. Bang! 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 The entire Mount Fuji was disintegrating, and more magma continued to spew out, turning the entire sky red. Mount Fuji was an active supervolcano that hadn't erupted in several hundred years. Who knew how much energy it had accumulated? Now that it was detonated, all that energy erupted at once, terrifying beyond description. Even Xiao Ran clicked his tongue. If he had to face such a force of nature head-on, he too would be dead in an instant. He believed any Esper would face only death in the face of such a disaster. Turning into an Iceman or Iron Man was out of the question. You'd be melted directly. Even if you were a fire-type Esper who could turn into pure flame, in the face of such a destructive impact, you'd only be blown into atoms and die instantly. Xiao Ran was an exception, even able to bring 3 people along to watch the show, entirely because of the special nature of banishment. I'm in another dimension, so what if the universe is destroyed? I'll remain calm and unruffled. A pity for such a majestic mountain, Chong Yao lamented. The people were guilty, but what crime had the mountain committed? However, his face was clearly filled with excitement. The eruption of Mount Fuji was no less powerful than thousands or even tens of thousands of nuclear bombs exploding at once. Once the planet's accumulated energy was released, it was simply beyond the reach of any human weapon, a truly destructive force. It's said that the nuclear bombs humans possess can destroy the Earth dozens or even hundreds of times. In reality, they're just flattering themselves. Annihilating humanity is possible, but wanting to blow the Earth to smithereens? Heh! Not to mention anything else. The energy from a single eruption of Mount Fuji was roughly equivalent to the total power of all nuclear weapons. But was the Earth destroyed? Admiring this terrifying yet magnificent scene, Xiao Ran couldn't help but feel emotional. Compared to Yellowstone, Mount Fuji was still a little brother. According to scientists' predictions, if Yellowstone were detonated, not just the Yanks, but the entire globe would be affected. For the next few hundred years, or even longer, the entire Earth would be covered in thick volcanic ash. This was a mass extinction in the truest sense. So, could he go and detonate Yellowstone? Xiao Ran was itching to try. What if this was just a smokescreen put out by the Yanks to control public opinion? If a war breaks out, you must not bomb my Yellowstone, or we'll all die. That way, they could build all sorts of military facilities and shelters there. It's possible. For now, let's not worry about that. Let's just quietly enjoy the grand spectacle of the island nation's destruction. Xiao Ran and Chong Yao were excited and happy. Harita Akane was trembling, her reverence for her master growing even deeper, while Myo Aena was frantically trying to charge at Xiao Ran, hitting and biting him. Unfortunately, within the banishment space, she couldn't move at all. No matter how she flailed her arms and legs, she only spun in place, spinning up and down, spinning on the spot, as if she were in space, completely unaffected by gravity. A full half-hour later, the terrifying explosion finally came to an end. But the disaster was far from over. In fact, the real mass extinction was just beginning. Lava would continue to flow, and volcanic ash would cover the entire island nation, preventing this country from seeing the sun for a very, very long time. And breathing in too much volcanic ash would kill even espers. Furthermore, under the terrifying energy impact, the ice layer in the nearby sea had not only melted, but was now as hot as boiling water. This would definitely attract mutated beasts from the sea. Even if the island nation's espers wanted to escape, they would first have to get past the mutated sea beast-infested waters. TSK, that won't be easy. In short, after this battle, even if the little Japs were not completely extinct, they would be reduced to a sparse few, completely insignificant. Wanting to become a massive race again? Impossible. Xiao Ran wouldn't allow it either. Let's go, time to go home. Xiao Ran said with a smile. As he withdrew the banishment, he had already opened his spatial domain. He immediately took the three of them back. Still half an hour later, they arrived on the coast. Xiao Ran dropped Chong Yao onto the snow and was about to leave when he heard Chong Yao call out. Xiao Ran. He turned around to see Chong Yao giving him a military salute with an incredibly serious expression. Although I can't represent the entire nation, I still have to say thank you. Should I return the salute? Xiao Ran laughed. But I've never been a soldier. I'm afraid it would look ridiculous. Chong Yao lowered his arm, his face now sour. No need. De Chung was still the same De Chung. Xiao Ran turned around, waved his hand, and left with Hoard, Akane, and Myo Aena. Chong Yao watched them go. When Xiao Ran's group was out of sight, he got his bearings and then roared. Xiao Ran, you bastard. The guy had actually dropped him in Haidu. In the distance, the three-piece landmark was clearly visible. That bastard Xiao Ran had definitely done it on purpose. Dropping Old Chung in Haidu was, of course, intentional on Xiao Ran's part. There was no malice, just a bit of fun at Old Cheng's expense. Xiao Ran thought for a moment and decided not to continue his journey. After continuously using his powers, he was a bit tired too. He would stay in Haidu for the night and go home tomorrow. Xiao Ran went to find Li Wanchi. He wanted to see how Principal Li was doing recently. After all, besides Wu Shanglong, Principal Li was the person he respected the most. Such people were foolish, but that didn't detract from their noble character. Xiao Ran couldn't be like them, but he respected them. Haha, he totally wasn't thinking about that foreign girl. Soon, the three of them arrived at the ice house. Sure enough, the people who had stayed behind were still there. Principal Li, Xiao Ran called out from a distance. Xiao. Li Wanchi walked out of the ice house. Seeing Xiao Ran, he couldn't help but smile. What brings you here? Can I come and see you all? Xiao Ran also smiled. It's been 20 days. How is everyone? Not good, but not bad either, Li Wanchi said. However, a few days ago, a purple moon appeared at night, and our powers all increased by a large margin. You didn't miss it, did you? I didn't miss it. It's just that I have so much Esper energy now that 100 units is completely insignificant. Xiao Ran complained internally, but didn't say it out loud, lest people say he was showing off. He scanned the area with his spatial perception and deliberately asked in a casual tone, Hey, where's that foreigner? Li Wanchi had an expression of having seen through everything. He smiled and said, You're faking coming to see me. You're actually here to find Leah, aren't you? It's true he was looking for the foreign girl, but he hadn't come here specifically for her. It was purely because he didn't want to travel today. Xiao Ran just smiled. If old Li wanted to misunderstand, so be it. With his thick skin, why would he care? Leah went out to the sea to fish, Li Wanchi said anyway. However, his gaze swept over Hoard, Akane, and Myo Aena, and his brow furrowed. You came here to pick up a girl, yet you brought other women with you. And 2 of them at that? That's a bit much. Xiao Ran laughed heartily. These 2 are also international friends. One is named Hoard, Akane. The other is Myo Aena. Japanese? Li Wanchi was taken aback. How did you meet them? Both women were top-tier beauties, no less stunning than Leah. Especially the one with the vacant eyes. Although her expression was numb, she was still excessively beautiful. That alluring air of hers could stir something even in a man of his age and composure. Young men would definitely be utterly captivated by her. Xiao Ran said, Oh, I took a trip to the island nation and blew up Mount Fuji on the way. These 2 were left homeless, so I took them in out of pity. Li Wanchi couldn't help but roll his eyes. This young man was full of hot air, not a serious word in his mouth. Xiao Ran was quite innocent. He was clearly telling the truth. Maybe he'd said a bit too casually. Next time, he would be very serious and earnest when he said it. After chatting casually with Li Wanchi for a few more sentences, Xiao Ran's brow suddenly furrowed, and he vanished from the spot. Li Wanchi was stunned. What was going on? Why did Xiao Ran just run off? He didn't even care about the 2 little Jap women? Whoosh. Xiao Ran used continuous teleportation and was already deep under the sea. 10 kilometers away, Leah had just appeared in his perception, but behind her was a huge seal, a full 10 meters long, clearly treating the foreign girl as prey. Leah's speed was extremely fast at this moment, but this must have been induced by some burst technique she used. Her face was getting redder, and a few strands of her golden hair had turned white. It was clear she had reached her limit and would soon be unable to continue. A look of unwillingness appeared on her face. She really didn't want to die here. Unfortunately, she had already used her last ability, a burst skill. Now, her abilities were exhausted, and her Esper energy was about to hit rock bottom. She had no options left. Then, so be it. She stopped struggling and closed her eyes, waiting for death. Huh, why hasn't that seal bitten me yet? Does it want to torture me slowly? I'll fight it. She opened her eyes again, only to see a person. Xiao Ran, she cried out in immense joy. But because she was underwater, only she herself could hear the sound. Looking back again, there was no seal to be seen. If it weren't for the fact that this seal had chased her all this way, she would have thought the previous scene was just a figment of her imagination. Xiao Ran had saved her. At this moment, she was indescribably thrilled. Actually, Xiao Ran had saved her before, but the situation had never been this critical. Just now, she had given up struggling and was waiting for death. So, having taken a trip to the gates of hell and back, the turmoil in her heart was beyond description. She swam fiercely towards Xiao Ran and threw her arms around him. No, she had to have this man. He had many girlfriends. She didn't care. She didn't care. For days she had thought of him day and night, her mind filled with this man. If she had been a bit reserved before, now that Xiao Ran had pulled her back from the brink of death, all her inhibitions were shattered. Xiao Ran was a bit surprised, not expecting the foreign girl's reaction to be so strong. Hiss, you're playing dirty. Pressing something so big against me is clearly targeting my weak spot. A thought moved in his heart, and he brought the foreign girl continuously upwards. After a few teleports, the two of them appeared on the ice plain above the sea. Xiao Ran. The foreign girl held onto Xiao Ran tightly, as if afraid he would disappear. Take me to a place where no one is around. Right now, I just want to be with you. It wasn't that she, a foreigner, wasn't bold enough, but she was afraid of being censored if she said it out loud. Xiao Ran's heart stirred. He never denied his interest in Leah. After all, not only was she beautiful with a fantastic figure, she was also a Western woman, a territory he had yet to venture into, even though it was all the same with your eyes closed. Let's go then. Horita Akane and Myo Aena. No need to worry about the fake goddess. Her servility was deeply ingrained. It was impossible for her to betray him. Maybe if a man stronger than Xiao Ran appeared one day and ground him into the dust, this woman might switch her target of worship. Before that, this woman's obedience was beyond doubt. It was Myo Aena who was a bit of a problem. Ever since witnessing the explosion of Mount Fuji, she had become very abnormal. Xiao Ran was a little afraid she might suddenly lash out and hurt someone. However, this woman had probably only evolved on the day of the purple moon. Her strength was low. Horita Akane could easily subdue her. At the very least, wasn't Principal Li still here? Xiao Ran had 100% confidence in Li Wanchi. So what was there to hesitate about? Xiao Ran smiled, picked up the mermaid-like foreign girl, and ran towards the depths of the sea. Once he was sure Li Wanchi and the others couldn't find them, he built an ice house with a thought, started a fire basin, laid out a mattress, and TSK. Wasn't this a new bridal chamber? Leah had already reverted from her beast form, her long, fair legs dazzlingly white. Xiao Ran wouldn't ask if she would regret it at a time like this. The atmosphere had been built up to this point. All that was needed was to work hard. The foreign girl knew gratitude and was willing to repay it, which Xiao Ran naturally accepted with pleasure. Some people say it's all the same with the lights off. Heh, you can't see the face, that's true, but does having a good figure have anything to do with whether the lights are on or off? Xiao Ran was extremely satisfied. A Western woman, TSK. He had finally ridden a Western woman. Xiao Ran, I missed you so much. How much? Xiao Ran asked mischievously. Didn't you just find out? The foreign girl retorted, winking coquettishly. Yo, I didn't expect you to be an old pro too. Xiao Ran laughed heartily. I don't seem to remember. I'll have to experience it again. When Xiao Ran returned to the ice house with Leah in his arms, it was already 3 hours later. The sky was about to darken. Although Leah hadn't brought back any food, the others weren't just waiting around to be fed. They had gone into the city to forage for food. The harvest wasn't much, but it wasn't nothing either. Everyone shared and divided it, and it was barely enough to eat. During the meal, Li Wanchi suddenly said, Xiao, Have you received any notice from the government recently? A notice from the government? Xiao Ran was taken aback. Now, was there still a government? Li Wanchi nodded. Actually, I'm not sure if it's a real government organization. It's just that when I went into the city a couple of days ago, there were leaflets all over the ground telling us survivors to... He made a counting gesture and continued. To gather at the People's Square in 3 days. Government personnel will show up then to discuss matters of reconstruction. For real? Xiao Ran found it a bit hard to believe. It had been almost 5 months since the cataclysm, and they were already putting reconstruction on the agenda. However, with the universal evolution, everyone was an evolver, with at least nearly 100 units of Esper energy. They indeed no longer needed to fear the severe cold. So what was the problem with starting reconstruction now? Crap, why didn't Chung say anything? I forgot, I didn't ask him either. I'll go find Chung tomorrow. If the government really has a reconstruction plan, the first military region should be among the first to receive the news. That's the plan. That night, everyone went to bed early. In this world of ice and snow, what entertainment was there? You ate, you slept, as simple as that. A night passed. Early in the morning, Xiao Ran set off with the foreign girl, Hoard, Akane, and Myo Aena, heading for the first military region. Upon arrival, Xiao Ran teleported, and the four of them appeared in front of Chong Yao. Holy crap, the Chung had just come out of the bathroom. When he suddenly saw Xiao Ran's group of four, his hand trembled, and his pants almost fell down. Fortunately, he was a body arts type with fast hands, and he managed to pull them up again, avoiding embarrassment. Xiao Ran, Chong Yao roared. How many times have I told you? Knock when you come. Knock, knock. You threw me in high-do yesterday, and I haven't even settled the score with you. And now you're launching another surprise attack today? This is too much. Xiao Ran laughed heartily and said, Chung, let me ask you something. Chong Yao was just roaring. You don't know? Chong Yao asked back, surprised. Nonsense. I've been in the island nation all this time, Xiao Ran glared at him. Picking up girls? Chong Yao glanced at Hoard, Akane, and Myo Aena, teasing him. That was just incidental. Xiao Ran didn't dwell on this point. So government forces have really appeared? Chong Yao nodded, then shook his head, leaving Xiao Ran a bit confused. After a moment's thought, he said, It is indeed a government force, but with the emergence of Espers, there's been a major shift in power. The current decision-maker is from a young Turk faction. Xiao Ran shrugged. That doesn't matter. As long as it's a government organization, I was afraid someone was impersonating the government to scam people. Reconstruction is a good thing. Although the weather is still hellish, after the purple moon, all things have evolved. Human survival is no longer a problem. So the next step is naturally reconstruction. Chong Yao nodded, his eyes shining. It's also a good opportunity to expand our territory. Xiao Ran patted his shoulder. In the future, I'm going to retire and live my pastoral life. Don't you dare come looking for me. Chong Yao rolled his eyes. You're so strong. Aren't you going to take this opportunity to fight for the country? He was a bit excited. Now is the time to build an immortal foundation for our China. Our generation might have to bear a bad name, but if we can unify the earth, future generations will thank us. All right, I don't have such great ambitions, nor such high aspirations. Xiao Ran waved his hand in refusal. My long-cherished wish was to trample Tokyo and view the cherry blossoms. Now that I've blown up Mount Fuji and the entire island nation is finished, my wish is fulfilled. From now on, I'll withdraw from the world of conflict. Don't come to me for things involving fighting and killing. He was just waiting for the birth of his children to become a father. Chong Yao tried to persuade him further, but Xiao Ran found him annoying and ran off with the foreign girl and the other two. How could Chong Yao chase him? He could only give up in frustration. Xiao Ran thought for a moment. He could take the foreign girl home, but not the two Japanese girls. Hoard Akane was no problem. Her servility was strong, and as long as Xiao Ran was powerful enough, she wouldn't rebel. But Myo Aena was different. She looked like a bewitching and seductive siren, but deep down, she had a strong sense of ethnicity and nationality. Xiao Ran had blown up Mount Fuji in front of her, effectively destroying the entire island nation. She must hate him to the bone. If she couldn't beat Xiao Ran, wouldn't she secretly attack the other women? What if she was very good at hiding it and waited until Xiao Ran's children were born to make her move? He couldn't be too careful. Xiao Ran never expected Myo Aena to fall in love with him. Haha, Japanese women were just for fun. He had no further demands. So he would find a place for them in Mountain City. Within 10 kilometers would be fine. He could monitor them at any time. Let's go. He enveloped the three women in his spatial domain, activated his teleportation at a speed of 930 meters per second. How long would 1,100 kilometers take? A mere 20 minutes. Of course, traveling at full speed was also draining. It was only 20 minutes, but it was more tiring than a fierce battle. His esper energy was directly cut in half. Xiao Ran first settled the two Japanese girls, Harita Akane and Myo Aena, in a villa district about 7 kilometers from the cruise ship. This distance was within a 1-second travel time for Xiao Ran. Even if Myo Aena wanted to do something, he could arrive in an instant to stop her. Then, he took Leah to the cruise ship. Everyone was naturally happy to see Xiao Ran return, but when they saw the foreign girl, the women were unperturbed because when did this guy ever go out and not bring a woman back? He was already being restrained now, only bringing back 1 or 2 at a time. You have to remember, he used to bring them back by the carload. Xiao Ran began to live a retired life. Every day, he accompanied his women, looked forward to the birth of his children, and, incidentally, searched for golden snowflakes. He was now incredibly powerful. Taking advantage of the fact that he could still gain esper energy by killing espers, he had made a huge profit in the island nation, pushing his level to nearly 190,000 units. If not invincible in the world, he should at least be one of the top 2. But of course, Xiao Ran would not rest on his laurels. He would refuse to become even more powerful. He had the first military region help him monitor the global weather, notifying him immediately wherever it snowed. It was just that the first military region had few satellites under its control, only able to cover most of the country. That was fine too. This way, if it snowed somewhere, Xiao Ran could immediately rush over. Sparing no expense with teleportation, he could reach any region in the country within 1 or 2 minutes. And he still couldn't get any golden snowflakes? Xiao Ran's life became ordinary, dull, and unpretentiously simple. For the first time since the cataclysm, he truly relaxed and enjoyed a retired life. There was really no difference from an ordinary person, except for having a few too many wives. Occasionally, he would go to see Harita Akane and Myo Aena to enjoy some Japanese flavor, which was very satisfying. The days passed one by one. The first military region would call from time to tell him that satellites had detected snowfall somewhere. It was just that Chong Yao found a bit strange. Some places were hundreds or even thousands of kilometers apart, and a snowfall only lasted for a dozen minutes. Could you make it in time? Yes, it was true that Xiao Ran had taken him to the island nation, but that had also taken over half an hour. How could he know that Xiao Ran hadn't been traveling at full speed at all back then? He would never reveal his full strength to others, unless it was a life-or-death situation. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. During this time, Xiao Ran had harvested golden snowflakes worth nearly 9,000 units of esper energy. Compared to killing espers in the past, this harvest was indeed not large, but now, golden snowflakes were the only means to increase his esper energy. Such a harvest was actually very considerable. The purple moon never appeared again. Xiao Ran took out some golden snowflakes for all the women to level up a bit, leaving about 5,000 units in his other dimensional space as a reserve. He didn't use any himself. It wasn't necessary for now. He was already powerful enough. Although he had only been active within the country these days, he had seen that the strongest person was only at around 10,000 units. Compared to him, they were just kids. And if a truly powerful enemy appeared, he could use banishment on himself and slowly absorb the golden snowflakes in his own time. If there were no variables, he was planning to leave the golden snowflakes for his children. Before the apocalypse, the greatest wealth to give to one's children was money, power, and connections. Now, golden snowflakes. The more you had, the more powerful you were, and the powerful could easily have anything in this world. Right now, there are only 5 kids, but in the future, 10, 20? Xiao Ran naturally had to prepare in advance. Prepare 10,000 units of esper energy for each kid. This would be their startup capital. If they wanted to become more powerful, it would depend on their own abilities. Giving them 10,000 units of esper energy was like paving the road for them in advance. If they still couldn't walk a broad, smooth path, Xiao Ran had no intention of letting them live off their parents. And over this past month, Xiao Ran had also discovered a pattern. The number of golden snowflakes was decreasing. If he divided this month into 2 halves, he had actually harvested a full 6,000 units in the first half, and in the second half, only 3,000 units. In other words, were the golden snowflakes also decreasing? Would they eventually stop? Possibly. In that case, was the path of evolution broken? Xiao Ran didn't know. During this period, the government forces finally showed their power, reorganizing the scattered regions, and every city was actively rebuilding. It was no longer possible to gain esper energy by killing espers, which quickly dissipated the antagonism and hostility between people. Coupled with the appearance of a strong government force, who would dare to go against such a trend? It was just that the weather was too cold. Even if espers had strong resistance to cold, there was no need to shiver all day, right? Now, various places were carrying out construction underground, building one underground city after another. Earth-type espers dug, body arts types were responsible for moving materials, metal types erected steel beams, fire types handled welding, water-type espers helped mix concrete, and plant-type espers served as logistics. The more populous a place was, the more complete the variety of espers, and you could pull together a team for whatever talent was needed. Brain-type, or rather, mental-type espers entered research positions, actively studying espers. What was the essence of esper powers? What were golden snowflakes? How could one artificially raise their esper level? One research topic after another was thrown out, and the entire nation's strength was unprecedentedly cohesive, conducting research at a secret base. If they could really solve these mysteries, that would be incredible. Xiao Ran was very interested. He would sneak over from time to time to check on their research progress. Of course, no one knew of his existence. With his domain expanded, even if he stood right next to someone, if he didn't want to be seen, they naturally wouldn't see anything. It was just that these people's progress couldn't be said to be non-existent. It was completely at a standstill. Xiao Ran was starting to lose interest in coming. Then he would just come and check once every 10 days. Just when Xiao Ran thought that life would continue like this forever, he suddenly received a call from Chong Yao. Was it snowing somewhere again? He answered the phone, and De Cheng's voice immediately came through, but it was very serious. Xiao Ran, do you have time to come to the first military region? Xiao Ran neither agreed nor refused, but asked, what happened? Chong Yao hesitated for a moment before saying, actually, it's not a big deal. We're just preparing to set up the new leadership team, and we need to select a few leaders. Xiao Ran nodded. In the past, each city was self-governing. Now that they were reorganized into a unified country, they faced the problem of who would lead. But with so many cities in the country, who would be the leader? There was naturally a lot of gaming and exchange involved. Especially now, when everyone was an esper, all the fancy tricks were fake. Whoever had the stronger esper power could take the position. It was that simple. So why was De Cheng looking for him? Xiao Ran smiled. I'm just a commoner. Why are you telling me this? If you were really a commoner, I definitely wouldn't be looking for you, Chong Yao said bluntly. He wasn't afraid of Xiao Ran, because he knew Xiao Ran had his bottom line and wouldn't turn on him, let alone kill him, just because he talked back a few times. I want Secretary Tang to be the leader. I've seen Secretary Tang's character and ability with my own eyes. He can definitely be a qualified, even excellent, leader. However, my ability is limited. I can't push Secretary Tang up. Xiao Ran laughed. So, you're hitting me up for it? Chong Yao smiled. Actually, this kind of situation is not uncommon. The current leader in the imperial capital actually has a slightly lower esper level than me, but he has a powerhouse assisting him. It's because of this powerhouse's strong support, plus the fact that he was already in the imperial capital, that he has a huge advantage. However, whether in terms of seniority, ability, or previous rank, Secretary Tang is in no way inferior to him. Since he can find someone to support him, of course I can find someone to support Secretary Tang. Only then did Xiao Ran understand, and he let out an "oh." The person Chong Yao mentioned should be from the Young Turk faction in the organization. It was this person who had pushed for it, allowing the government's power to spread rapidly across the country. There was no doubt about this person's ability and determination. As long as he was capable, it didn't matter who was in charge. Xiao Ran decisively refused, saying, I'm a retired person. I won't get involved in this kind of thing. Find someone else. Don't call me with such boring things unless it's important. You're wasting my time. Xiao Ran hung up the phone directly. If he were willing to meddle in other people's business, why would he have retired? With his current power, it would be easy for him to push himself up to be the leader. But what was the point of being a leader? He found it troublesome even to be the head of a settlement, let alone the leader of an entire country. He found it annoying, and he didn't have the ability for it. So why occupy that position? Let someone capable do it. He stretched. Right now, he just wanted to live his quiet little life, waiting for his children to be born. As for other things, he couldn't be bothered. However, Xiao Ran was still a little interested in that capable aid of the Young Turk. How strong was this person? So Xiao Ran went to the imperial capital to take a look. He was indeed very strong. At the level of about 10,000 units, excluding Xiao Ran, he should be the #1 powerhouse in the country. Of course, compared to Xiao Ran, he was still a little brother, with a huge gap. This person was named Li Moma. From his name, One could tell that his family elders must have hoped he would sharpen his weapons and prepare for war, to fight for the country, and he was indeed like that. Li Moma clearly had the strength to sweep away everything, yet he was willing to be an assistant. He was like the Chung, the type who was wholeheartedly dedicated to the public good, with no selfish desire to use his strength for personal gain. Worthy of admiration. After figuring all this out, Xiao Ran went straight back home. As he had said before, it didn't matter who was the leader of this country, as long as they could lead the country on the right path. Back in Mountain City, a thought occurred to Xiao Ran. It seemed like he hadn't been to Harita Akane's place in a few days. He had to go and replenish some food. He was definitely not thinking about that siren, that femme fatale, Myo Aena. Arriving at Harita Akane's place, one was extremely enthusiastic, while the other acted as if she hadn't seen him, appearing very arrogant. However, Myo Aena was no longer trying to kill herself. It seemed she had resigned herself to her fate. But Xiao Ran knew that wasn't the case. A strong hatred was still hidden in her bones. She had just learned to hide it. What was she doing, lulling him into a false sense of security before trying to assassinate him again? Hith. Xiao Ran didn't expose her. Instead, he deliberately made Myo Aena do some difficult positions. However, Myo Aena only resisted a little before doing them silently, which made Xiao Ran even more certain that this woman was definitely hiding something. Haha, so why should he expose her? The one enjoying it was him. After finishing, Xiao Ran returned to the cruise ship with a few teleports. Wang Lulu had already prepared dinner, and as soon as Xiao Ran returned, everyone started eating. The family was happy and harmonious. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. The Chung called again. "Where is it snowing?" Xiao Ran said as soon as he answered. "Is that all you care about, where it's snowing?" Chong Yao said irritably. "The new leadership team has been selected." Xiao Ran quickly stopped him, smiling. "You don't need to tell me these things. I'm just an ordinary old citizen. I don't care about national affairs. I just want to guard my own little plot of land." Chong Yao couldn't help but curse with a laugh. He always wanted to stir up Xiao Ran's sense of responsibility and get him to contribute more to the country. But Xiao Ran was just impervious to it. However, this was countless times better than being full of ambition and wanted to turn the entire country into his private domain. So, Chong Yao would only bring it up when he had the chance, but he wouldn't be so tactless as to keep nagging, lest it have the opposite effect, and he personally cultivate a super monster. Fine, if you don't care, then forget it. However, this conference also formulated new laws. Although it's not the final version, I believe there won't be any major changes. I'll send you a copy to look at. Don't you go breaking the law, or I'll have no choice but to lead a team to arrest you. Xiao Ran just smiled. If I really did something bad, could you guys punish me? To take a step back, if he didn't want to be discovered, he guaranteed he could do it without a trace. Ever heard of the spatial domain? Beep. He did indeed receive a document. Since he was idle anyway, he opened it and looked. He had thought that this kind of legal regulation would be long and tedious, but it turned out to be very concise. Xiao Ran took a look and couldn't help but nod. Indeed, the times were different, and the laws were completely different from before, having moved with the times. The only thing that was the same was the protection of human life. Even espers could not kill or injure people without reason. Otherwise, just like before, those who should be detained would be detained, and those who should be executed would be executed. It was absolutely not allowed for anyone to treat human life as if it were grass. However, other aspects were completely different from before the apocalypse. For example, the one-husband, one-wife system was removed. Although no new regulations were made, everyone who understood. What the law does not forbid is permissible. This was already a widespread reality. The strong in the special era were like magnets, with countless women willing to throw themselves at them. This was inevitable. The times were different. Xiao Ran couldn't help but laugh. Fortunately, this was the case, otherwise Chong Yao would have had to lead a team to arrest him. Wait, bigamy should be under the jurisdiction of the police, right? Then it should be Xiao Chung coming to arrest him. In this new law, the status of espers was elevated very high. Moreover, schools in the future would also become esper-oriented, guiding students on how to use their powers correctly, on the right path, not on crooked ways. Xiao Ran couldn't help but wonder if he should send his future children to this kind of school. Picking up girls should start from a young age. Can't be detached from the masses. Go, they must go. Xiao Ran casually tossed his phone aside. However, a pair of hands reached out from behind him and covered his eyes. Guess who I am? How can I guess like this? Xiao Ran laughed. You have to lean your head on mine. Oh, the person behind him obediently pressed her body against him. Officer Jiang, Xiao Ran said immediately. Did you cheat? Jiang Yuning released her hands and walked around to the front of Xiao Ran. I even used a voice changer. There's no way you could have heard it. Xiao Ran clicked his tongue. You underestimate me. I never cheat when I play games. Then how did you know who I was just by me leaning on you? Jiang Yuning was completely baffled. Xiao Ran, on the other hand, looked at her Pikachu t-shirt, which was stretched to the point of deformation, and smiled without a word. Xiao Ran thought his peaceful life would continue forever. But he was wrong. Just a week later, he once again received a call from the 1st Military Region. To Chung, tell me the address of the snow. No nonsense. Xiao Ran directly cut the other person off. This is Chung Shun. However, the voice that came from the other end of the phone was Xiao Cheng's. Huh, where's the Chung? Xiao Ran asked. Chung Shun hesitated for a moment before saying, My brother is missing. What happened? Xiao Ran couldn't help but frown. He wouldn't be morally blackmailed by Chong Yao, but he still quite admired Chung. Chung Shun took a deep breath before saying, A few days ago, the Viet monkeys invaded us. Xiao Ran laughed. The Viet monkeys dare to invade us? Did they eat a leopard's gall? He found incredible. Weren't the Viet monkeys beaten so badly in the 80s that they almost had a breakdown? How dare they come to die again? Woof woof. The leopard protested unhappily from his side. Chung Shun sighed. Today is not like the past. High-tech weapons are almost useless against espers now. Are we supposed to use a nuclear bomb to deal with a few dozen people? That's true. Besides nuclear bombs, even missiles would have a hard time harming high-level espers now. Someone like Xiao Ran was even more of a freak. When he nuked Mount Fuji before, he was sitting right on top of the bomb. And even during the Mount Fuji eruption, which was 10,000 times more terrifying than a nuclear bomb, wasn't he watching from close proximity? Not only did he watch himself, he even brought 3 spectators. More powerful than Chong Yao. Xiao Ran asked. Otherwise, it should have been Chong Yao making this call, and Chung wouldn't be missing. Chung Shun nodded. Although Xiao Ran couldn't see it, he could guess. A soldier's first duty is to protect, not to invade. Back when killing espers could grant us esper energy, we didn't level up much, which led to our overall strength not being strong. But in exchange, more people survived. This had its pros and cons. The benefits were self-evident, but the drawback was, once a powerful enemy appeared, they would be difficult to deal with, and it was very likely that the people they worked so hard to protect would instantly become someone else's slaves. The Viet monkeys invaded a border city and killed many of our people. After receiving the news, my brother immediately took people there by plane. Unexpectedly, this group of Viet monkeys was far more formidable than imagined. My brother was injured but escaped. A total of more than 30 people went, but only 4 escaped. One of them had a communication device and was able to contact the base and report the situation, Chung Shun said. Xiao Ran was surprised. You can use airplanes now. Chung Shun nodded. Clearing the runway is actually very simple. The main thing was to solve the problem of low temperatures affecting the aircraft performance. This has already been accomplished through the efforts of our large number of scientific researchers. So that's how it is. Xiao Ran didn't care. His teleportation was much faster than an airplane now, but taking a plane was more relaxing, as he didn't have to run himself. If my ability were 100 times, 1,000 times, or even more powerful, could I go to any place with just a thought? He imagined for a moment, then smiled. You continue. Chung Shun took a breath to stabilize his emotions, then said, Xiao Ran, I want to ask you to take action. He knew that Xiao Ran had retired and was not one to meddle in other people's business, so he was prepared to be rejected. Xiao Ran, however, smiled. All right, Chung Shun was stunned for a moment before he reacted. Then he was overjoyed. You agree? Are you disappointed? Then I'll refuse. Xiao Ran smiled. No. Chung Shun said hastily. I was just a bit surprised. All right. I'll immediately send you the coordinates of my brother's last known location. Soon, Xiao Ran received a message with just a set of coordinates. Very simple. All right, I'll go look for this group of Viet monkeys, Xiao Ran said. He had always been one to mind his own business, so why was he so proactive now? Because he was about to become a father. At this critical time of China's reconstruction, a bunch of damn Viet monkeys had come to cause trouble, affecting our construction progress. And what if this group of Viet monkeys was powerful enough to occupy a large amount of our territory? How could Xiao Ran agree to that? The petty Viet monkeys think they're worthy. For him, how long would a trip take? He opened the map and entered the coordinates from just now. It was very close, right on our border with the country of Yu, in a small county town called Delong. It seemed that Chong Yao had found the invading Viet monkeys in Delong County. After a battle, it was Chong Yao's side that was defeated. Only 4 people managed to escape, and they had scattered. That made sense. If they had all run in the same direction, it's possible that none of them would have escaped. They would have been completely wiped out. Xiao Ran told the women what to eat for dinner, then opened his spatial domain, activated his teleportation, whoosh whoosh whoosh, and set off for Delong County. It was only over 600 kilometers. How long would it take Xiao Ran? He didn't even need to use his full power. A few minutes later, he arrived. However, Xiao Ran did not directly enter the county town. Instead, he hung suspended above it, his spatial perception expanding enough to cover the entire town, and immediately found that group of Viet monkeys. However, Chong Yao was not within his spatial perception. Find a Chong first, Xiao Ran thought, and with a move of his body, he began to search. Spatial perception was definitely the ultimate tool for finding people. Like a radar, it swept over, and Xiao Ran had a complete grasp of everything in the area. In the past month, he seemingly hadn't absorbed any Esper energy to improve himself, but he had been constantly training his various abilities, especially the speed at which he processed the feedback from his spatial perception, truly achieving synchronous scanning. This was very interesting. When his brain was operating at high speed, time seemed to slow down. No, it could even be said to have stopped. A moment was like eternity. He was naturally at ease and relaxed. He came from the north, so he first searched to the east, then to the west. Not finding De Chong on either side, Xiao Ran was taken aback. Could it be that De Chong had run south? Wasn't that entering the territory of EU? Worthy of De Chong? Xiao Ran understood after a moment's thought. At that time, Chong Yao realized he was no match for the Viet monkeys and immediately told the remaining people to scatter in all directions. The direction he chose was the one with the least hope of survival, the direction of Hiyu, and this direction would certainly draw the most hatred, attracting more and stronger people to pursue him. De Chong, you really didn't disappoint me. Xiao Ran smiled and walked south. This time, he didn't use teleportation. He believed that Chong Yao couldn't have run far, probably within 100 kilometers nearby. He walked south, and after a few kilometers, he saw 5 people. Their skin was dark, and their Esper energy was around 500 units. They were clearly searching. One person opened his mouth towards various directions, as if he were shouting, but no sound was produced. But Xiao Ran's spatial perception captured waves emitting from this person's mouth. After hitting trees and plants, they reflected back and were received by his ears. It seemed this person's ability was similar to sonar, which was indeed very useful for finding people. And they were about to find De Chong. A smile appeared on the corner of Xiao Ran's mouth. He had already found Chong Yao, but De Cheng's current state was not very good. De Chong was heavily injured and hiding in a tree hollow. Xiao Ran did not immediately reveal himself, but followed the 5 Viet monkeys. They were about to discover De Chong. Sure enough, after a short while, the sonar man suddenly showed a look of joy and said, "I found that Chinese soldier." He said it in the language of Hiyu, which Xiao Ran didn't understand, but from his expression, and especially since the sonar waves had hit De Chong, he knew that these 5 had found him. Let's make De Chong anxious for a bit. That's what you get for always nagging me. The 5 men crept quietly forward. Because of his heavy injuries, Chong Yao's alertness was also greatly reduced. He was clearly a big shot with over 1,000 units, and a body arts type at that. He should have had sharp eyes and ears. Even if his vision was obstructed, his hearing should have been fine. But even though the 5 men's footsteps on the leaves and grass made sounds that an ordinary person couldn't hear, but he absolutely should have, Chong Yao was completely unaware, instead feeling drowsy. Arriving near the tree hollow where Chong Yao was hiding, the sonar man made a gesture towards the large tree in front of him, then began to give commands, signaling the other 4 to spread out and form an encirclement. 30 seconds, the sonar man said in a low voice. The 5 men dispersed and took their positions. When 30 seconds were up, they attacked simultaneously. Boom! 5 Esper attacks were thrown out at the same time, striking towards Chong Yao. Amidst the loud explosion, the big tree burst open. Chong Yao shot out in a wretched state, with several new wounds on his body. He was both angry and unwilling. This was truly a case of a tiger being bullied by dogs in a barren land. If he were at his peak, no, even if he had just a tenth of his strength, he could have easily toyed with these 5 monkeys. But they had sent this group to find him, naturally having calculated his current strength, knowing that this number of people was enough to take him down. Hatred. He was actually going to die at the hands of a few Viet monkeys. Did Chong need help? Just then, a lazy voice suddenly rang out. It was Xiao Ran. Chong Yao was first stunned, then overjoyed. Yes, yes, he shouted, truly overjoyed at this moment. Who is it? The 5 Viet monkeys looked towards the source of the voice, but they saw nothing. Only the voice was heard, not the person. They looked at each other, all understanding in their hearts. The newcomer's ability must be invisibility. Haha, we have someone who specializes in countering that ability. The sonar man immediately sent out a sound wave. After one, he changed his angle and sent another. 3 sound waves were enough to cover the area completely, without a single blind spot. Invisibility? Ha, that can only deceive the eyes, but it can't deceive his sound waves. Then, his face changed drastically in horror. What did he detect? A dragon. The kind of dragon from the east, the totem of the Chinese people, a full 100 meters long. How could that be? What's wrong? His companion next to him quickly asked. Impossible. Impossible, the sonar man exclaimed, looking like he had been scared silly. This made his 4 companions even more confused, but they were also greatly alarmed and prepared to strike at any moment. Chong Yao was speechless and said, "Can you stop playing? I'm heavily injured here, can't you see?" The sonar man couldn't believe it, so he sent out another sound wave. This time, knowing where the mysterious person was, 1 sound wave was enough. The speed of sound is 340 meters per second. He was only 50 meters away from Xiao Ran, so the time it took for the sound to go out and bounce back was incredibly short. He was stunned again, because the result fed back by the sonar. The other party had changed from an eastern dragon to a tiger. A super giant tiger, a full 100 meters long. My God, he was clearly using sonar, but he rubbed his eyes as if they were playing tricks on him, and tried again. The third detection. Buzz. The sound wave bounced back, and he saw Xiao Ran's third form, a giant bird that seemed to be burning with flames. He suddenly understood. Weren't these the azure dragon, white tiger, and vermilion bird from Chinese mythology? Is your damn ability to transform into the 4 divine beasts? I've been tricked. Attack with me, he said in a low voice to his 4 companions. All right, the 4 of them nodded. Facing this kind of invisible enemy, attacking with the sonar man was undoubtedly the wisest choice. Attack, he roared, and the 5 of them acted at the same time, launching their attacks towards Xiao Ran's direction from his position as the center. However, the 5 attacks were thrown in, but did not hit anyone, as if there was nothing there. Impossible, the sonar man shouted excitedly. He sent out a sound wave, and this time he saw a creature with the body of a turtle and the head of a dragon. Well now, the black tortoise. Cold sweat beaded on the sonar man's forehead. The target was clearly right in front of him. Why couldn't he hit it? The fear of the unknown gripped his heart, making him sweat profusely. Ruan Shing, what the hell are you doing? The other 4 asked. The sonar man did not answer, but the cold sweat flowed faster and faster, as if it were about to become a small stream. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration. This invisible man was mysterious, but what about Chong Yao? He was standing right there. Kill this man first, he pointed at Chong Yao. The other 4 felt it was not right to ignore an invisible enemy, but since they couldn't find a target, they could only listen to the sonar man. All right, they attacked at the same time again, launching their Esper powers at Chong Yao. The 5 attacks passed through, but Chong Yao stood there perfectly fine. The attacks passed right through his body without causing him the slightest harm. The 5 of them stared with wide eyes, completely unable to believe it. If Chong Yao had blocked their attacks, they would at most have lamented that Chong Yao still had some strength left, but they wouldn't have been surprised at all. But now it was different. How could the attacks pass through his body? Are you a phantom? Even a phantom should have flickered. Chong Yao sighed helplessly. Xiao Ran, my dear Master Xiao, can you please stop playing? I can't, Xiao Ran laughed. The 5 sonar men were all panicked. This invisible enemy was too terrifying. They looked at each other and all turned to run. Xiao Ran laughed. You come to China, kill people, and think you can get away with it? The 5 of them ignored him and just ran with all their might. But as they ran, they suddenly found that their upper and lower bodies had separated. Their 2 legs were still moving forward, but their bodies were falling. What the hell? I've been cut in half. But why don't I feel anything? Where was the danger warning? The 5 of them were all dumbfounded. Then they felt the sharp pain from their wounds and even saw their own organs spill out from their body cavities. Espers had tenacious life force, so even so, they did not die, but they could feel their life force rapidly draining away. At that moment, they saw the air ripple like the surface of water, and a person appeared out of thin air. This was the last scene they saw in their lives. Xiao Ran stood in front of Chong Yao. Chong Yao glanced at him and said irritably, "Aren't you going to help me up?" Xiao Ran laughed. "You have hands and feet. You still need me to help you." Holy crap, Do I look like I can walk? Chong Yao cursed first, then asked nervously, what about my brothers? Did they all make it back alive? Xiao Ran shook his head. So far, only one person has escaped to a safe place and sent a message back to the first military region. As for the others, it's likely they've met a bad end. He had kept his spatial perception open all the way here, but he hadn't found any lone Chinese soldiers. Chong Yao's expression immediately darkened, and then he punched the air fiercely. When I've recovered from my injuries, I'll definitely kill all these Viet monkeys. Xiao Ran rubbed salt in the wound. Weren't you in perfect condition when you fought the Viet monkeys before? Chong Yao couldn't help but clutch his chest. I'm a wounded man now. Do you have to provoke me like this? Xiao Ran laughed heartily, then asked back, injuries? What injuries? Can't you see, huh? Chong Yao touched his body, only to find in surprise that his injuries had actually healed. In disbelief, he jumped a few times, kicked his legs, and threw punches. Indeed, his injuries were completely healed. Chong Yao couldn't help but look at Xiao Ran, his eyes filled with unconcealable shock. He said, it's such a waste for your skills not to be serving the country. No. Xiao Ran held up a hand to stop him. I'm a very undisciplined person and absolutely do not accept others telling me what to do. So you can put away those words. Otherwise, if I really joined your organization, and ran into some second-generation princeling, I'd probably kill his whole family. Chong Yao's face darkened, but he obediently shut his mouth. Xiao Ran wasn't scaring him. He would really do that. Forget it. Xiao Ran could only be used as a surprise weapon, to be deployed only when most needed. Otherwise, he might blow up his own side. At least, Xiao Ran was here now. Going to kill the Viet monkeys? He looked at Xiao Ran. Xiao Ran nodded. These Viet monkeys are really audacious, daring to invade even China. If we don't teach them a lesson, they'll really think China has no one. The Viet monkeys have gotten arrogant. They think the times have changed, that the old technology and military are obsolete, and now it's all about the level of esper power. So they think they can invade China, even occupy this great nation, and become its new masters? In their dreams. Time to teach them a lesson. Seeing Xiao Ran agree, Chong Yao started to run, but stopped after 2 steps, turned back, and said, you lead the way, I don't know it. Although he had fled towards the yesterday, it had gotten dark soon after, and a thick fog had settled. He had no idea where he had run to. In the dark, he had stumbled upon a tree hollow and had hidden there, but had passed out due to his severe injuries. Now you want him to find his way back. He really didn't know the way. Xiao Ran laughed heartily. You don't know the way, but you're still running ahead. Just follow obediently behind me. Chong Yao was really not happy, but what could he do? The two of them, one in front and one behind, soon arrived at Delong Town. He could see that the Viet monkeys were still in the same place. Xiao Ran was taken aback. In his spatial perception, a person was flying rapidly towards the group of Viet monkeys. This person had a pair of wings and was approaching a speed of Mach 2. Was he a Viet monkey or a Chinese expert? Xiao Ran scanned him. This person's esper energy was around 3,000 units, and he was about 30 years old, in the prime of his life. No, this person shouldn't be a Viet monkey. If this person were Vietnamese, then Chong Yao would never have been able to escape yesterday. So, this person could only be an expert from our country. That made sense. Even Chong Yao from the first military region had fallen here. China would definitely have to send an expert. If they let this group of Viet monkeys advance unopposed, they would really think China has no one. Seeing Xiao Ran suddenly stop, Chong Yao was confused and asked, why did you stop walking? Xiao Ran smiled. An expert has arrived. An expert, Chong Yao murmured, looking at Xiao Ran with some surprise. For even you to call him an expert, how powerful must he be? Xiao Ran laughed. Since I'm the one making the judgment, of course, I'm not included. If he were included, even Li Moma would just be a little brother, not qualified to be called an expert. Chong Yao rolled his eyes wildly. Tui, damn it. Why couldn't he control his mouth? He had let this guy show off again. They've already started fighting. Let's walk over slowly, Xiao Ran said. Chong Yao was a bit skeptical. He hadn't even heard the sound of fighting yet, which meant the battle was happening very far away. How did you see it? However, he decisively didn't ask, afraid of being on the receiving end of another of Xiao Ran's brags. The two of them walked for about another 3 kilometers, and Chong Yao finally heard sounds about 300 meters away. He couldn't help but be moved, looking at Xiao Ran with an expression as if he had seen a ghost. From 3 kilometers away, you could actually detect the commotion, and you even knew if the person who came was an expert. What kind of monster is this? The Cheng had long known that Xiao Ran was formidable. After the nuclear explosion of Mount Fuji in the island nation, it was deeply etched in his mind. However, Xiao Ran always managed to refresh his understanding. He thought he already understood Xiao Ran's strength, but Xiao Ran always managed to surprise him again. The two of them walked towards the source of the sound. Soon, they stopped in front of a hotel. At the entrance, two groups of people were fighting. To say it was two groups was an overstatement, as the smaller side had only one person. So, who was the enemy and who was the friend was clear at a glance. There were a total of 29 Viet monkeys. The strongest among them had a power level of about 1,500 units, far inferior to this 3,000-unit expert. All of them combined were not enough for him to fight alone. But now, only the Viet monkeys were attacking. This expert was just dodging and had not counterattacked. At first, Xiao Ran thought he was a show-off, but after watching for a while, he was speechless. Because this expert was actually constantly trying to persuade them, telling this bunch of Viet monkeys to quickly retreat to their own country, that this was Chinese territory, that their invasion would cause conflict between the two countries, blah blah blah. Xiao Ran was shocked to hear it. Big brother, how many days has it been since the apocalypse? How have you managed to survive until now? Also, it's impossible to become a 3,000-unit expert just by relying on golden snowflakes. That would inevitably require killing people. But if he couldn't even bring himself to harm the Viet monkeys, could he be expected to be a ruthless person? Strange, very strange. There was someone on the Viet monkey side who understood Chinese, but they all ignored this expert and just kept attacking, taking his forbearance as weakness. Don't force me, this expert said, a vein throbbing in his neck, the whites of his eyes bloodshot, looking a bit scary. So what if we force you? The Viet monkeys completely failed to realize the seriousness of the problem. I'm losing control, this expert said. Suddenly, the aura his whole person emanated changed completely. Bloodthirsty, tyrannical, fierce. How do you want to die? This expert, as if he had become a different person, asked in a chilling tone. Interesting. Xiao Ran was a little stunned. How had this person suddenly changed so completely? A dual personality, perhaps. Haha, the Vietnamese soldiers were in for it now. This new big shot was clearly a hot-tempered one. Unfortunately, the Vietnamese soldier didn't know he was courting death and continued to bombard the powerhouse. You've been passively taking a beating for so long, and now you say you won't fight? The powerhouse snorted, and with a flap of his twin wings, his figure shot out. Poof, poof, poof. As his figure passed, heads flew into the air one by one, and headless corpses sprayed blood. Holy crap! The group of Vietnamese soldiers was terrified, their faces instantly turning as white as ghosts. You're actually this strong? If you're this strong, why were you fighting so timidly before? You were pretending to be weak to ambush us. The leader of the Vietnamese had no choice but to act, charging toward the powerhouse. One was around 1,500 units, the other around 3,000 units. A fight was still possible, but it was like an adult fighting a child, a completely one-sided beatdown. The Vietnamese leader dodged and weaved, not daring to face him head-on. The powerhouse, unable to land a hit, grew furious. A blood-red light suddenly appeared on his wings, and with another flap, his speed nearly doubled. What did that mean? Mach 4. Clearly, he had unleashed his ultimate move. The Vietnamese leader had just felt a sense of dread when, in the next moment, he was sliced into 4 pieces, slashed by the powerhouse's wings, which he swung again and again like sharp blades. Yeah. The powerhouse let out a strange laugh, his gaze falling on the remaining Vietnamese soldiers, scaring them into a panicked retreat. He gave chase, beginning a massacre. In a moment, only one of these Vietnamese soldiers was left. The powerhouse flew over, about to kill him with a single strike, but a hand reached out from nowhere and grabbed his wing. He was startled and looked over to see that the one who had acted was a man in his late 20s with a faint smile on his face. He frowned, his heart tightening. How did this person appear? I didn't sense him at all. How is that possible? Swish! He flapped his other wing, slashing at the man. Stop! We're on the same side. Chong Yao ran over, shouting, My name is Chong Yao, from the 1st Military Region, identification number 0000468. The powerhouse couldn't stop his attack. Swish! The iron wing passed through Xiao Ran's body, but couldn't harm him in the slightest. Holy shit, what kind of ability is this now? The powerhouse was completely bewildered. To say Xiao Ran could grab his wing with one hand meant Xiao Ran's strength was immense, and his hand was very steady. But for his wing to pass through his body without causing any harm, what the hell was that? It was incomprehensible. However, Since Chong Yao had provided a new identification number, the powerhouse accepted their identities. His gaze fixed on Xiao Ran as he slowly said, "My name is Yin Shien, from U City. My new number is 00000034. Huh, does a lower identification number mean a higher status? And stronger abilities?" Xiao Ran wondered, a little curious. "And you?" Yin Shien asked Xiao Ran. "Me?" Xiao Ran smiled. Xiao Ran, "Oh right, old Chong. Do I have an identification number?" "You do," Chong Yao said irritably. 01314520. "Wait, why is that my number? I'm no soldier of true love." "You did that on purpose, didn't you?" He turned to look at Chong Yao. Chong Yao shrugged. "The identification numbers are handled by the capital's household registration department. I'm just responsible for reporting your information. I have no control over what number they give you." "You have no control, but assigning a number to an ordinary person is no big deal. The god of war of the first military region can't handle something like this?" Xiao Ran shot him an annoyed glare, but didn't make a big deal out of it. Did he care? If he really cared, he'd probably be the leader of the country by now. Xiao Ran released his grip, and Yin Shien retracted his iron wings, but he was still not appeased. He jutted his chin toward the last Vietnamese soldier. "Why did you stop me from killing him? You were the one acting like a pacifist monk just now, refusing to kill. Now it's your turn to lecture me?" Xiao Ran smiled. "He's the only one who understands Chinese. If you killed him, who would I ask?" Yin Xien's anger subsided slightly, but he was still disdainful. "What do you want to ask?" Xiao Ran gestured with his hand, signaling him to be patient, then asked the last Vietnamese soldier, "Who sent you? How dare they invade China with just a few people? The strongest is only at the 1,500 unit level. Where do they get this confidence? Therefore, they must have been sent by someone." The Vietnamese soldier was stubborn and initially refused to speak. But after a few slaps from Yin Shien that knocked out half his teeth, he confessed. "Ruan Shing sent us." The Vietnamese soldier started talking, confessing everything. Ruan Shing had been an insignificant figure in Ueha country, but after the cataclysm, although he didn't evolve immediately, a fruit tree in his home mutated. This tree grew one fruit a day. If consumed, an ordinary person could instantly become an ability user, and an ability user would become much stronger. The efficiency, well, it was similar to the previous purple moon, around 100 units. However, the fruit was only effective the first time. Eating more did nothing. Ruan Shing had been starving. Not wanting to die of hunger, he had picked a fruit and eaten it when the hail stopped, and, as a result, he became formidable. Imagine gaining 100 units of power at the very beginning of the apocalypse. How strong would that be? So, Ruan Shing unsurprisingly became the top expert in Ueha. And after learning that killing ability users could plunder their powers, he began a massive slaughter, his strength soaring. He only stopped a few days ago, after the purple moon, when killing ability users no longer allowed him to plunder their powers. His goals also changed, no longer killing and plundering, but expanding his territory and ruling over a larger population. Speaking of large territories, wasn't there a great nation nearby? So, Ruan Shing sent an advance team to test the waters in China. If China had no powerful experts, he would immediately lead his troops to invade and take over the Central Plains. Historically, Ueha had always been a vassal of China. If he could unify China, TSK, he would become a national hero. Son of a bitch. Yin Shien snorted immediately, turning to Xiao Ran and Chong Yao. "I'm going to Ueha to slaughter that Ruan Shing. Do you have the guts to follow?" Old Chong, with his foul temper, also snorted, not to be outdone. "Old Yin, who are you looking down on? Let's go right now. Whoever doesn't go is a coward." Yin Shien was about to take a step, but suddenly his body trembled and the expression on his face changed. No longer domineering, no longer fierce, but with a scholarly air. "Absolutely not," Yin Shien said immediately. "If we enter Ueha country, it would be an invasion of another nation. The country is currently in a state of rebuilding. It is absolutely not advisable to start a war with a foreign enemy. This will affect our recovery." Xiao Ran was speechless. His personality switched? No way. The domineering and decisive Yin Shien from before was more fun. This one is so long-winded. Too much like a preachy monk. Helpless, Xiao Ran could only look at Chong Yao. "You go back first. Your brother and the others are very worried about you. As for this Ruan Shing, I'll take care of him." He had his eyes on Ruan Shing's mutated fruit tree. "You come to our China and go on a killing spree. I kill you and take a fruit tree as interest. That's not too much, right?" "Of course not." Yin Shien wanted to persuade him further, but Chong Yao held him back. Xiao Ran, Chong Yao called out. Xiao Ran didn't turn his head. Don't be soft-hearted. Don't leave a single one alive, Chong Yao shouted loudly. His brothers, his comrades in arms, had been killed by this group of Vietnamese soldiers. Were they not innocent? In this invasion by the Vietnamese soldiers, how many Chinese citizens had they killed? Were they not innocent? Since you brazenly invaded, don't blame us for striking back fiercely, killing you until not a single one is left. One must be ruthless to the enemy. Only then will the surrounding countries tuck their tails between their legs. Otherwise, everyone will think China is easy to bully, that they can invade without paying any price. All right, Xiao Ran agreed, grabbing the last Vietnamese soldier and taking off. He bent his knees slightly, then burst forth with terrifying power. Whoosh! He shot into the sky, heading towards Yue country. However, although this Vietnamese soldier had revealed Ruan Shing's residence, he didn't have a phone and couldn't provide precise coordinates. But it didn't matter. As long as he knew the city, that was enough. How big was Yue country anyway? Xiao Ran didn't need to use his full power. He soon arrived in the city where Ruan Shing was located. Hanoi. His spatial perception fully extended, covering over 300 square kilometers. Everything was projected into his mind, instantly grasped by him. Upon arriving, the Vietnamese soldier naturally knew the way and pointed in the right direction. In fact, Xiao Ran had already found Ruan Shing. He just needed to find the strongest person here. He was indeed not weak, with an ability level of around 15,000 units, a whole lot stronger than China's #1 expert, Li Moma. If old Li encountered this person, he might be instantly killed if he was careless. Even Xiao Ran was slightly cautious. Just slightly. This is it, the last Vietnamese soldier said, pointing to a luxurious villa complex. His name was Wu Wan. Xiao Ran smiled. Go and inform Ruan Shing to roll out here and face his death. The Vietnamese soldier was stunned, not expecting Xiao Ran to let him go so easily. A look of surprise crossed his face, and then he quickly nodded. Yes, yes. He scurried towards the villa complex. Arriving at the entrance, he quickly waved at a group of Vietnamese soldiers, shouting, Is the boss here? I have something important to report. These Vietnamese soldiers were all very puzzled. Weren't you in China? Oh, you must be here to report on the progress. Haha, it seems China has no experts. It's our turn to go all out. Oh, take their land, snatch their women. The group of men roared, extremely excited. Wu Wan was in no mood to waste time with them. He stomped his foot and quickly ran towards the large villa where Ruan Shing was. Xiao Ran, meanwhile, walked over slowly. Half of the entire villa complex was under the control of his spatial domain, completely monitored by his spatial perception. Not a single person could escape. He saw the mutated fruit tree. The strange thing was, although it could produce evolution fruits that allowed a person to gain about 100 units of power by eating one, the tree itself was not strong. Well, it was hard to describe a tree as strong or not. What he meant was, this tree had not evolved any offensive or defensive measures. Besides having a more vigorous life force, it was almost no different from an ordinary fruit tree. So it was strange, how did it produce evolution fruits? How could such a magical energy, or substance, appear out of thin air? The reason Xiao Ran had made this trip was secondary to killing Ruan Shing. Obtaining this evolution fruit tree and figuring out its working principle was the main goal. If he couldn't see it on a macroscopic level, what about the microscopic? Xiao Ran enhanced his spatial perception, focusing on the tree. He refined it down to the nanometer level. He made a discovery. A strange substance appeared from somewhere, absorbed by the fruit tree. These substances gathered and formed. Evolution liquid or something similar. But compared to the golden snowflakes, there were some other substances in it. Harmful substances. It was precisely these harmful substances that acted as a suppressor, allowing each person to eat only one evolution fruit. Eat two. The harmful substances remaining in the body would increase, inhibiting the evolutionary effect. Interesting. If given more time, would the body metabolize these harmful substances? Then wouldn't it be possible to take a second, a third, or even more? Xiao Ran was very interested in this fruit tree, but he was even more interested in the process of how the tree extracted that strange substance. If he could master this method, wouldn't he be able to continuously extract evolutionary substances, turning himself into a being with millions, or even tens of millions of units? Xiao Ran's heart pounded. The gains from this trip would far exceed his imagination. You stop right there. As he walked over, the 5 security guards at the gate naturally saw him, and immediately shouted at him. However, they only thought Xiao Ran was a local and didn't consider the possibility that he was Chinese. Xiao Ran's thoughts were interrupted by them. He glanced over and smiled. "What are you saying?" As soon as he spoke, the 5 guards knew this person was not from their country, but from China. A Chinese? He actually dares to come here? Kill him. Although the 5 were security guards, they were also ability users. After the Purple Moon event, there were no ordinary creatures left on Earth. However, the ability level of these 5 was less than 100 units. They probably didn't receive the baptism of the Purple Moon at the first opportunity, so they only had about 50 units. They didn't take Xiao Ran seriously at all, their expressions filled with contempt. Xiao Ran wasn't angry. Why get angry at dead men? It wasn't worth it. He walked straight towards the inside of the villa. Letting Wu Wen go in to report was just to gather all the ability users here to come out together, so he could eliminate them in one fell swoop and save some trouble. At this moment, the 5 security guards had already charged over. They had all evolved because of the Purple Moon, so they were physical-type users. Their bodies were their strongest weapons. With a thought from Xiao Ran, a spatial slash was unleashed, and the 5 Vietnamese soldiers were immediately decapitated. "Sai, I'm getting old. My attacks aren't as ruthless as they used to be. Otherwise, these 5 should have been cut into hundreds of pieces." Xiao Ran walked into the villa complex nonchalantly. He headed straight for the location of the fruit tree. After a while, he stopped. Didn't they say Ruan Shing was just a minor figure? How can he afford to live in a villa complex? Xiao Ran quickly had a thought. If Ruan Shing could move from the slums to here, why couldn't this evolution tree? So, just because the tree was growing here didn't mean Ruan Shing started his rise from this place. He smiled. Of course, that wasn't important at all. He stood under the fruit tree. It wasn't tall, no more than 5 meters, but it wasn't short either, enough for an ordinary person to look up at it. Right now, there was a single fruit on the tree, not large, about the size of a ping-pong ball, purple all over, but clearly not yet ripe, or would have been picked. As Xiao Ran was observing, the people in the villa complex were completely alerted and rushed over. "Chinese, are you here to die?" Ruan Shing snorted. Although he already knew that the team he sent out had been completely wiped out, the strongest among them was only at the 1,500 unit level. And him? He was 10 times stronger. So, did he need to be wary of this Chinese man? Yin Shien had used his ultimate move to kill his subordinates. So, even if Xiao Ran was as strong as Yin Shien, he would only be around 3,000 units. "Translate for him," Ruan Shing said to Wu Wen. Wu Wen quickly translated. Xiao Ran continued to stare at the fruit tree, as if it were a peerless beauty, completely unwilling to be distracted. What kind of attitude was this? The group of Vietnamese soldiers was furious. Too arrogant, just too arrogant. This was their Yueha country. You come to our place and act so nonchalantly, as if you own it? Ruan Shing frowned. Go, test his strength. His power in this country was unmatched. So when he gave an order, who would dare to disobey? Immediately, a man stepped out, cracking his neck and wrists, making popping sounds. He looked at Xiao Ran, his face full of disdain. "A mere Chinese, your mouth stinks, so shut it," Xiao Ran said faintly. Even though he couldn't understand the other's words, he could guess from his expression. The man stopped abruptly. He tried to open his mouth, but found he couldn't, as if his mouth had been sewn shut. MMPH. MMPH. He could only make such grunting sounds. Seeing this, everyone was shocked. Good heavens, what kind of ability is this? However, they were still not the least bit nervous. First, their companion had not yet attacked, and second, the boss was still sitting on the sidelines. Sure enough, seeing that he couldn't open his mouth, the man gave up trying and simply stared at Xiao Ran. As long as he killed this person, any ability would naturally disappear. He bent his knees slightly, and bang, he rushed toward Xiao Ran. His speed was extremely fast. He wasn't a physical type user, but a beast morph like Yin Shien. As he charged, he began to transform, his arms turning into large pincers, clamping towards Xiao Ran's waist. Xiao Ran smiled slightly. Change back for me. A powerful ability suppression, his spatial domain operating in reverse. In just an instant, the man reverted to his normal human form. How can this be? The group of Vietnamese soldiers was once again stunned. This was something they couldn't comprehend at all. Ruan Shing, however, frowned and asked Wu Wen, "What did he say?" Wu Wen quickly translated. Ruan Shing nodded. It seemed Xiao Ran's ability was a very special word of power, where his words became reality. This ability was undoubtedly strong, but no matter how strong an ability was, it still depended on the ability level. Could a 100-unit ability shake a 10,000-unit powerhouse? Obviously impossible. However, this kind of ability, he really wanted it too. Ruan Shing was envious for a few seconds, then decided to end this farce. Was this China's counterattack? Just one person coming over, what did that prove? This person was probably China's strongest. So, after he killed this person, China would have no stronger experts left. He would write history, becoming the first person in US's history to conquer China. What a monumental achievement. How many slaves and beautiful women would he possess? Thinking of this, he no longer hesitated. With a wave of his hand, a blade of wind slashed towards Xiao Ran. Incredibly fast. Swish! The wind blade passed through Xiao Ran's body. All the Vietnamese soldiers cheered. The boss's wind blade was no joke. It could slice a building in half. A person? That was as easy as cutting tofu. However, after the wind blade passed, Xiao Ran was completely unharmed. Everyone was stunned. What happened? Why was Xiao Ran unscathed? Ruan Shing didn't believe it. Swish, swish. He sent several more wind blades slashing at Xiao Ran. He guessed that Xiao Ran had used his word of power ability to become ethereal or something, which was why his wind blades hadn't hit a physical entity. But how many times could you do that? Swish, swish, swish. One wind blade after another passed through Xiao Ran's body. But just like before, they couldn't harm him at all. Ruan Shing's brow furrowed. This Chinese man was a bit tricky. Xiao Ran finally tore his gaze away from the evolution fruit tree. He smiled slightly. I don't have time to play with you all anymore. I have to take this treasure back to study it slowly. With a thought, bang, 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 the heads of all the Vietnamese soldiers simultaneously imploded. Except for one person, Ruan Shing. He was, after all, a 15,000-unit powerhouse. Xiao Ran's large-scale spatial compression could easily kill the others, but he had managed to turn into wind in time. No matter how much you compress space, can you crush the wind? The wind moved, forming Ruan Shing's face, his expression incredibly grave. The ability Xiao Ran had just used was definitely not word of power. What type of ability user are you? He shouted loudly. Unfortunately, Xiao Ran didn't understand the Yuehe language, so it was like a chicken talking to a duck. But even if Xiao Ran understood, he couldn't be bothered to reply. He had completely lost interest in Ruan Shing. His focus was entirely on this evolution fruit tree. He felt that through this tree, he could very likely uncover the secrets behind abilities, ability users, and the evolution liquid. I'm asking you a question. Ruan Shing roared, transforming into a fierce wind and charging toward Xiao Ran. The wind swirled like a tornado. Xiao Ran smiled slightly, his spatial domain fully activated. Ruan Shing was instantly immobilized, and then he was rapidly forced out of his wind form back into a solid one. What? Ruan Shing was so shocked his scalp went numb. How is this possible? How? After I turn into wind, I should be invincible. Why am I being forced out of this state? He had just said one word, but his body had already fully materialized. The next moment, bang, he exploded like a ripe watermelon, turning into a pile of bloody pulp on the ground. A pity, 15,000 units. Xiao Ran felt a sense of regret, but looking at the evolution fruit tree in front of him, his face broke into a smile. As long as he could crack the secret of how this tree could bear evolution fruits, he could obtain not just over 10,000 units of power, but 100 million, or even 10 billion units. Xiao Ran started digging. Simple. A few spatial slashes, and he directly cut out a large block of earth 5 meters long, wide, and high. The evolution fruit tree could then be removed effortlessly without any damage. Xiao Ran would rather expend more effort than let this precious tree suffer any harm. He thought for a moment, then packed up all the Vietnamese soldiers, including Ruan Shing's remains, and sent them into his alternate dimension. He had an idea. These people possessed abilities, and although he couldn't absorb them, he could use them for an experiment. Time to go home. Xiao Ran opened his spatial domain and took the evolution fruit tree with him. At a high speed of nearly Mach 3, he was back home in just an hour, and he wasn't even at full speed, otherwise it would have been a few minutes less. Just a few minutes. Arriving at the cruise ship, Xiao Ran specially transported a large amount of soil and planted the fruit tree in the outdoor swimming pool. The deep end was 8 meters deep, so it could easily accommodate the tree. This tree could bear 1 fruit a day, but Xiao Ran didn't know when it would be considered ripe. So he waited. He would wait until the fruit ripened and fell on its own, at which point he would use a spatial swap, and the fruit would land in his hand. The fruit skin was deep purple and emitted a faint fragrance. Xiao Ran didn't consume it himself. nor did he give it to Lu Mei and the others. Instead, he gave it to Gu Meng, one of the two nurses. How could he let his own women be the guinea pigs? Even though he knew this thing should only have benefits and no drawbacks, he was unwilling to take the risk. Upon learning that this could enhance her abilities, Gu Meng was naturally overjoyed. "Thank you, Master Xiao. Thank you, Master Xiao," she thanked him incessantly. At Xiao Ran's urging, she immediately ate the fruit. Xiao Ran activated his spatial perception to observe the subtle changes in Gu Meng. The results proved that the fruit's effect was identical to the golden snowflakes, except for an additional substance that was like a toxin. This substance was extremely difficult to metabolize, but it was slow, not impossible. He estimated it would take more than half a year, but no more than a year. If one could eat a fruit every 6 months, then one could gain 200 units of power a year from the evolution fruit tree. Now, that killing people no longer allowed for plundering abilities, 200 units a year was still quite substantial. Of course, Xiao Ran wouldn't care about 200 units, but if he could also obtain the strange matter like the evolution fruit tree did, TSK, he would be truly invincible. The evolution fruit tree was the breakthrough point. Xiao Ran put aside all other matters and just observed this fruit tree. He stared at the tree every day, and when he wasn't staring, he was using his spatial perception to watch it. He watched it in his spare time, while eating, and even during intimate moments. Fortunately, it had become an instinct, so Lu Mei and the others didn't notice, otherwise they would have definitely nagged him. However, he still couldn't figure out how the evolution fruit tree extracted this strange matter. It was as if these things came from another dimension. Another dimension? Xiao Ran was taken aback. Could it really be so? After all, his exile ability could also toss people and things into another dimension, which proved that other dimensions existed. So, was it strange for the strange matter to come from another dimension? Should I try using exile? Xiao Ran used exile on himself, but found nothing. No, that's not the way. Xiao Ran exiled both himself and the evolution fruit tree, and the result. The evolution fruit tree could no longer absorb the strange matter. So, the strange matter didn't come from another dimension? Was he wrong? No. Xiao Ran shook his head. Why should I assume there's only another dimension? What if there's a 5th dimension, a 6th dimension? If exile only throws me into the 4th dimension, and the strange matter is in the 5th or 6th, then of course I can't track it. Xiao Ran frowned. If the strange matter was truly in a higher dimension, even if he knew, how could he obtain it? There must be a way. This fruit tree can do it. There's no reason I can't. I'll find it slowly, keep observing, and I'll eventually find a way. Xiao Ran no longer put all his energy into observing the evolution tree. Instead, he went to practice his various abilities, especially teleportation. Nowadays, others were moving at speeds of Mach 3 or Mach 4, while he was only approaching Mach 3. How could that be? He was a powerhouse of nearly 190,000 units. What was teleportation? It was moving from point 1 to point 2 with a single thought, with no process in between. The thought arrived, and so did he. Therefore, the process could be considered to consume no time. So why did it now take 0.8 seconds to activate a teleportation? Because after he went from point 1 to point 2, he needed to readjust his domain before he could continue from point 2 to point 3. That 0.8 seconds was spent doing this. This left a huge room for improvement. Of course, continuing to increase his ability level, expanding his spatial domain to 500 meters, 1,000 meters, or even 10,000 meters would also increase his speed. But it was too difficult to increase his ability level now, basically relying only on the golden snowflakes. So, the most effective method was to increase the speed of readjusting his domain. Half a month later, Xiao Ran compressed this time to 0.7 seconds. Although it was only a 0.1 second improvement, in terms of hourly speed, it was a 14% increase. Quite astonishing. After another 20 days, he further compressed the time to 0.6 seconds. Now, his speed per second reached 1240 meters, and his hourly speed was a terrifying 4,464 kilometers. Mach 3.6. Xiao Ran believed that as long as he kept practicing, this adjustment time could be further reduced, but the effort required would increase exponentially. The further he went, the harder it would be to compress it by 0.1 seconds, because going from 0.2 to 0.1 seconds was a 100% improvement. It was bound to be difficult. Mach 3.6, while not the fastest in the world, was definitely top tier. It was enough for now. Xiao Ran then shifted his focus to other abilities, especially the space gate, which had been forged too. A very great change. At first, it was just a flat plate, as flat as could be. Later, it became slightly deformed. And now, it looked very much like a satellite dish. In fact, it could already be used as a shield, capable of covering Xiao Ran or a large group of people, increasing their safety factor exponentially. And what was the most crucial part? Keeping the space gate open consumed no ability power at all, and Xiao Ran could also get food and other supplements from the alternate dimension at any time. He could completely outlast anyone to the end of time. Of course, it was just a shield, not a sphere, so it wasn't secure enough. Even a single loophole was unacceptable. This was a long and arduous road, to be taken slowly. Su Ching May and the others had been pregnant for 3 months, their bellies slightly showing. Among the remaining girls, 2 more had become pregnant, Jiang Yuning and Lu Mei. It seemed that in a year or 2, he would have a flock of children. Xiao Ran was very much looking forward to it. After more than 30 days, each woman had received an evolution fruit, and their ability levels had all increased significantly. Any new fruits could now be stored by Xiao Ran for his future children. He had also harvested quite a few golden snowflakes, about 4,000 units worth. Xiao Ran. Chong Yao called. Where's it snowing? Xiao Ran asked with a smile. Pa, in your mind, am I just a tool to tell you where it's snowing? Old Cheng said, disgruntled. Xiao Ran laughed. Oh, since when did you become so self-aware? Chong Yao was speechless for a moment before saying, the China Ability User Power Ranking list is out. Aren't you interested? Huh? Xiao Ran was slightly interested. Tell me about it. Chong Yao didn't keep him in suspense. It just came out today. I saw my hands on it. I'll copy a file for you. Ding. Xiao Ran's phone received a file. Xiao Ran hung up the phone first and opened the file to look. Sure enough, it was a list called the China Heaven List with a total of 100 names. Ranked first was Li Moma, identification number 00000009, with a combat power assessment of 10,723 points. It was quite accurate. Xiao Ran had scanned Li Moma's ability level, which was around 10,000 units. Now, his combat power was assessed at over 10,000 points, which meant the current level of technology was quite good. In that case, this list was highly authoritative. However, Li Moma's identification number was 9. Why 9? What was the ranking based on? Wasn't he publicly known as China's number 1? Xiao Ran nodded. Strength was important, but one also had to consider the position one held. The person with number 1 was probably the current leader. This was also why Li Moma disliked power. Otherwise, he could have definitely taken that position. Just like Xiao Ran himself. Xiao Ran looked at the second person on the list. Shi Yin Lai, combat power 9, 211. Huh, there was actually another ability user with over 9,000 units? Indeed, the country was so large. How could there be a shortage of talented people? The third was named Liang Yu, combat power 8, 812. Fourth was Lu Feng, combat power 7, 420. Fifth was Chong Shi, combat power 7, 154. Sixth was Guang Yunshu, combat power 6, 744. Seventh was Han Weilai, combat power 6, 329. Eighth was Luo Mingming, combat power 5, 788. Ninth was Tan Yang, combat power 5, 322. 10th was Zhou Nan, combat power 4, 690. Xiao Ran scrolled down. Yin Shien was ranked 23rd, while Old Cheng barely made the list, ranked 99th with a combat power of 1, 184. He pondered for a moment, wondering how many people in the country were like him, hiding their strength and not on the list. The first military region only knew he was strong, but not how strong. Xiao Ran had no intention of being on the list. Wasn't it better to keep a low profile and make a fortune quietly? He continued to hone his abilities, study the evolution fruit tree, and work hard every day to create offspring. In a flash, another 10 days passed. Xiao Ran finally made substantial progress. He hadn't found the source of a strange matter, but he could distinguish it. Could this be considered progress? He couldn't reach into a higher dimension to absorb the strange matter like the evolution tree, but Xiao Ran could use it for other purposes. He took out a golden snowflake, just 2 units worth, so it wouldn't be a hard take to waste. What for? To try and extract the strange matter. If Xiao Ran didn't know what the strange matter was, how could he extract it? Now, it was different. He had analyzed this substance. The next step was to extract it. How to extract it? Spatial slash. He opened his spatial domain and used spatial slashes to separate it from other substances. This was a fine-grained operation, and the strange matter was entangled with other substances, so the operation was incredibly complex. Xiao Ran was extremely patient. After cutting bit by bit, finally, a unit of strange matter broke free from the constraints of other substances and gained freedom. However, This unit of strange matter immediately disappeared. Where did it go? Another dimension. A thought struck Xiao Ran. When he released the second unit of strange matter, he also used the exile technique in advance. The strange matter didn't escape. It was restrained. It really worked. Xiao ran through it into his alternate dimension and continued the operation. After 9 times, he had extracted all the strange matter from the snowflake. He touched the golden snowflake again. Nothing happened. But when he released the strange matter from his alternate dimension and touched it within the exiled space, he immediately absorbed power. Not much, a little less than 2 units. It worked. Xiao Ran was overjoyed. Why go to so much trouble? He could have just touched the golden snowflake directly and easily gained power. Of course, Xiao Ran's goal was not to obtain the strange matter from the golden snowflakes, but from within ability users. He began the operation. He reopened exile and threw a corpse out of his alternate dimension. It was a Vietnamese soldier with about 200 units of power. When he was alive, before getting the evolution fruit tree, Xiao Ran had no idea what the strange matter was, so he couldn't perform any operations. But now it was different. After constantly observing how the evolution fruit tree condensed the strange matter, he finally analyzed it. This gave him room to operate. Interestingly, the strange matter did not belong to this dimension, but living beings could bind it. However, after death, the strange matter would quickly dissipate, returning to the higher dimension. So, the reason the conversion rate for absorbing power was getting lower and lower before was because after a person died, the speed at which the strange matter returned to the higher dimension increased. And in the end, as soon as a person died, the strange matter immediately returned to the higher dimension. So even if you touched them right after killing them, you couldn't absorb any power. Why could I absorb power before? Because the strange matter is attracted to and bound by living things. So after killing a target, as long as contact is made, the strange matter would be attracted over. Xiao Ran felt his speculation was very reasonable. He scanned the corpse of this Vietnamese soldier. Not a single bit of power. It was normal. Now, as soon as a person died, the strange matter dissipated back to the higher dimension. So naturally, no power could be absorbed. To gain power, I can only target the living. A thought struck Xiao Ran. This was simple. A trip to Ueha would do. He had only wiped out Ruan Shing's group, but how many ability users were there in all of Ueha? Once this idea arose, he couldn't suppress it. He set off immediately. Unleashing a speed of nearly Mach 4, he arrived in Ueha in just over 10 minutes. Opening his spatial domain, he quickly found a group of ability users. I'll use you for my experiment. Xiao Ran began extracting the strange matter from the bodies of these Vietnamese soldiers. After a full 3 hours, he had completely extracted all the strange matter from one soldier's body. Upon absorption, it was exactly 198 units, identical to what he had sensed before. Xiao Ran was overjoyed. This way, not only could he gain power again, but it was at 100% efficiency, with not a single bit wasted. Awesome. And directly absorbing the strange matter had no side effects. Xiao Ran continued. After another 3 hours, he had completely extracted the strange matter from the second Vietnamese soldier. The efficiency wasn't high, but he could gain one person's worth of power each time. Over a day, he could easily break 1,000 units, which was quite substantial. The gains were great, but it was truly exhausting. The surgery to separate the strange matter was incredibly delicate, and after each operation, he was completely drained, mainly mentally, as if he had just completed several exam papers in a row. He didn't go back, but stayed there. After resting for 3 hours, his energy was fully restored, and he began a new round of surgeries. As the number of surgeries he performed increased, his efficiency also grew higher and higher, from 3 hours per person to 2.5, then to 2, and finally to 1 hour. But after reaching 1 hour, it became difficult to compress the time and improve efficiency further. At least at his current ability level, this was the limit. On the first day, he gained over 1,200 units of power. On the second day, it became 1,600 units, and it continued to increase. By the 10th day, he could harvest nearly 3,000 units of power per day. But this was also his current limit. This was mainly because the Vietnamese soldiers generally had an ability level of only around 100 units. He needed to perform 30 surgeries to obtain so much power. If each of them was at the 10,000 unit level, he could probably gain 50,000 units a day. Because the higher the ability level, the more troublesome the surgery, it couldn't be the same as for a 100 unit person. Xiao Ran's ability level soared. By the end of the 10th day, he had broken the 200,000 unit mark. Time to go back. He had been out for 10 days. Although he called home every day, he should go back for a visit. After all, he was getting a bit lonely. It was only 1,000 kilometers or so, very fast. Xiao Ran returned home, but didn't mention his gains from this trip. No rush. At night, naturally, Xiao Ran was satisfied. He came out onto the deck, looked at the evolution fruit tree not far away, and a smile appeared on his face. I really have you to thank. Within his body, a new ability was budding. 200,000 units of power. It was indeed time for a new ability. The next day, Xiao Ran did not immediately go to Yue country. Instead, he stayed at home with the women. He had been performing dozens of surgeries every day for the past few days and was physically and mentally exhausted. He needed a good rest. For the next 3 days, he just lazed around, having clothes brought to him and food served to his mouth, and acting as a diligent farmer. It was a happy and harmonious family life. On the 4th day, the new ability finally appeared. What the hell? What is this? Xiao Ran was stunned. This was his new ability? A tree? In his mind, a small sapling had appeared. It was really a sapling. But how could a sapling grow in his brain? No, how could a sapling possibly grow inside his brain? In the future, when the sapling grew up, would it push open his skull and grow out? A tree on top of my head? Good thing it's not grass. Wait, am I making jokes right now? How am I still in the mood to joke? Xiao Ran calmed down and carefully examined it with his spatial perception. No, this sapling was both in his brain and not in it. Because even as a sapling, it was nearly 2 feet long, but his head was nowhere near that size. Is it in another dimension? But because it was produced by my ability, it's connected to me? Let's assume so. But what's the use of this sapling? Xiao Ran tried to activate the small sapling, but it seemed to be just a sapling, with no function at all. Impossible. How could an ordinary sapling appear in my brain? And it can even cross dimensions. I probably just haven't figured it out yet. Xiao Ran sighed, his face full of sorrow. He had finally given birth to a new ability, but it was completely useless. So infuriating. To relieve my frustration, I'll go kill people in northern Myanmar. Xiao Ran set off immediately, arriving in the northern Myanmar region. This place had once been a hub for scams. Countless Chinese had been either tricked or came willingly chasing dreams of wealth. In short, it was a hotbed for fraud that had harmed countless people. To hold on to such a golden goose, it naturally had the support of local warlords. So, the scam compounds only took a small cut. The real big share was taken by the warlords in exchange for their protection and support to continue these evil deeds. Xiao Ran showed no mercy, starting with the strongest ability user, extracting the strange matter. In just 2 hours, this ability user became an ordinary person, contributing over 2,000 units of power to Xiao Ran. Next, Xiao Ran felt no sympathy, continuously extracting the strange matter. And once they lost their abilities, how long could they survive in this world? Xiao Ran didn't need to kill them. These people would soon perish on their own. After spending 7 days in northern Myanmar, Xiao Ran's ability level broke through 250,000 units. Unfortunately, no new ability was born. And the sapling? It was actually growing. Its roots had extended a bit, and it had grown a little taller, but it was still a sapling with no branches or leaves. Xiao Ran was speechless, but also very curious. If this sapling kept growing, would it really become a towering tree in the future? But what was its use? Was I thinking about the evolution tree so much that it influenced my new ability? This was truly frustrating. Xiao Ran sighed, his mood sour. He returned to the cruise ship again, planning to rest for a while to calm his mood. This was simple, because as soon as Lu Mei and the others surrounded him, Xiao Ran forgot his troubles. His phone suddenly rang. Xiao Ran picked it up. Xiao Ran, I just got news from the capital. A terrifying ability user from America has arrived, calling himself Captain America. He wants to kill the leader. Li Moma fought him, but was killed after holding out for only 3 minutes. Before Xiao Ran could make a joke, Old Chung shouted frantically. What? Xiao Ran was stunned. Li Moma was actually killed? Killed in 3 minutes? This Captain America was something else. Experts from all over have been notified and are rushing to the capital, but Old Chung paused, then said, if someone as strong as Li Moma was killed in 3 minutes, these people going there is just suicide. Xiao Ran, I think only you can stop that goddamn American bastard. I'm about to leave for the capital now. Whether you go or not is up to you. Click. He hung up the phone. Damn it, pulling this trick on me. Xiao Ran was first speechless, then he laughed. This was very much like Chong Yao. The foreigner is already kicking down our door. How can I not go? Xiao Ran shook his head. It took 3 minutes to kill Limoma, which meant this Captain America's ability was probably between 15,000 and 20,000 units, no more. Otherwise, if it still took 3 minutes to kill Limoma, his combat skills were just too poor. What was Xiao Ran's level? Over 250,000 units. Fighting a 20,000 unit ability user was like a father fighting his son. Can't miss out on this much power, Xiao Ran smiled. With a single teleport, he was outside the ship. After getting his bearings, whoosh, he headed towards the capital. With his ability level over 250,000 units, Xiao Ran's spatial domain had expanded to 506 meters, with a diameter of 1,012 meters. The interval between each teleport was also compressed to 0.5 seconds, meaning his speed per second reached 2024 meters. Mach 5.9. The distance from Shan City to the capital was only a little over 1,400 kilometers, so he could reach the capital in just over 10 minutes. It could be said that the only things faster than him now were rockets or the Dongfeng Express. In less than a quarter of an hour, Xiao Ran arrived in the capital. Boom! In the distance, a terrifying explosion sounded, with black smoke billowing into the sky. It must be there. Whoosh! Xiao Ran teleported, rushing towards that location. Before he even arrived, his spatial perception had already captured everything. He saw a blonde, blue-eyed woman on a rampage. Her ability was very strange. With a casual punch, a building would collapse as if it had been demolished. Under her rampage, buildings were flattened one after another. She was like a cat toying with a mouse, watching a group of people escape from one building only to hide in another. If you won't be our slaves, then be corpses. The foreign woman threw a phantom punch, and bang, another building was shattered to pieces. Actually, the foreign woman was quite pretty, deserving a score of 80, and her figure was explosive, full of alluring fleshiness. Xiao Ran knew, with a scan of his spatial perception, that this woman's ability level was around 15,000 units. She was Captain America? A woman? All right, no wonder Limoma died at her hands. 15,000 against 10,000. Her advantage was too great. Xiao Ran's eyes turned cold as he strode over. Captain America keenly sensed Xiao Ran's approach and immediately looked at him, her brow slightly furrowed, a flicker of doubt in her eyes, as if she was a little unsure of Xiao Ran's strength. But in the next moment, she threw a phantom punch at him. Instantly, Xiao Ran felt as if every cell in his body was about to explode. Although this punch couldn't kill him, at most it would make his skin bleed a little, but why bother? He wasn't here to show off. Xiao Ran used exile on himself, and simultaneously sent a spatial slash at Captain America. A crisis warning blared in Captain America's mind. She quickly turned her head and activated her ability. Boom! The spatial slash collided with her explosive shockwave ability. Although it still hit her, it missed her relatively soft brain and instead slashed her face, immediately leaving a long scar from which blood gushed. Captain America stumbled back several steps, touched her face with her hand, and was horrified. She had almost died. This Chinese man was terrifying. Crap, she had fallen into a trap. When she received the Chinese combat power list, she had thought Limoma was China's top expert. As long as she killed him, China would have no one left to fight. She never expected China to be so dishonorable, hiding such a great master. Are you all part of some strategic deception bureau? Captain America didn't hesitate, immediately turning to run. She couldn't win, not at all. She didn't want to die. Try to run? Xiao Ran sneered. He activated spatial compression. Captain America was immediately splayed out, as if being squeezed between two invisible steel plates. Spare me, Captain America said in English. Xiao Ran didn't understand, but even if he did, he wouldn't have cared. Coming to China to kill and cause chaos. And you expect to live? Dream on. He mercilessly pushed the spatial compression to its limit. Bang! Captain America was crushed into a bloody pulp of flesh and bone. Pretty? A nice figure? Not interested. Even if she came back to life right now, Xiao Ran would kill her again without hesitation. Crap, the power! Xiao Ran's mouth twitched. He had been so focused on his anger that he forgot to extract the strange matter from the foreign woman's body. Well, nothing to be done about it now. Just as Xiao Ran was about to leave, he suddenly looked up at the sky. Not good. A crisis warning flared up in his mind. Without thinking, he used exile on himself. In the next instant, a pillar of incandescent white light descended from the sky. Bang! It slammed into the city center. Then the pillar of light expanded, spreading out in all directions. Wherever the light reached, nearly 30 meters of the ground was scraped clean away. What the hell? Xiao Ran was horrified. What kind of weapon was this? Its power was even more terrifying than a nuclear explosion. The light pillar appeared suddenly and disappeared just as quickly. However, after it passed, the entire capital had been razed to the ground. Wherever the light had touched, all life was extinguished. The entire capital was dead silent. Not a single living person left. Xiao Ran was trembling all over. What kind of person could be so vicious as to destroy a city with a single shot? Which country's technology was this? America? After all, he had just killed their captain, so it was reasonable for retaliation to follow. But did America have such technology? No, absolutely not. Then what other country possessed such advanced technology? A green light flashed in the sky, and a ship bizarrely appeared. A ship floating in the sky, full of a sense of technology, entirely green, like a piece of jade. Xiao Ran's pupils contracted. At this moment, a guess arose in his mind. Whoosh, whoosh. Two beams of light shot down from the spaceship, not far from Xiao Ran. When the light faded, two people walked out. To say they were people was not entirely accurate. They wore strange combat suits, very form-fitting, and also wore helmets on their heads, which were not thick but gave a very light feeling. The front of the helmet was like glass, and the face inside could be seen clearly. Humanoid, but with green skin and eyes like lizards. Their eyelids didn't open and close up and down, but from side to side. Aliens. The thought immediately jumped into Xiao Ran's mind, and surprisingly, he wasn't too shocked, because right now, he only wanted to kill the alien invaders. Spatial slash. He launched two spatial slashes simultaneously. However, the two alien beings only took a few steps back, with green blood flowing from their eyes and noses, but they were not killed. It was their helmets. Xiao Ran immediately discovered through his spatial perception that these two aliens only had about 5,000 units of ability power. Logically, they shouldn't have been able to block his attack, but their helmets had released a force field at the critical moment, which had actually blocked his spatial slash. At least 90% of it. The two alien beings looked at each other, both showing shock and fear in their eyes. They chattered something, and before Xiao Ran could launch a second attack, two beams of light suddenly shot out from the spaceship, enveloping them, and then they disappeared. Back to the ship, probably. Xiao Ran looked up at the sky, his killing intent boiling. Did they think he couldn't do anything just because they hid in the sky? He was about to fly up with his spatial domain, but in the next moment, a crisis warning flared in his mind, and a terrifying beam of light shot towards him. Whoosh! The beam of light shot towards him. Xiao Ran immediately used exile, but as the beam hit, it actually penetrated the space of exile. At that moment, time seemed to freeze, or rather, it slowed down by a factor of 10,000, 100 million. Xiao Ran saw it clearly. When the light beam hit the exile space, the light bent strangely and then shot inside. If he was hit by that, even with his body enhanced by 250,000 units of power, he would surely die. He immediately used teleportation. Whoosh! He appeared over 300 meters away. What the hell was this light beam that could penetrate the dimension of his exile space? Xiao Ran immediately teleported again. He couldn't just passively take hits. He had to fight back. If he didn't fight back, death was the only path. On the other hand, judging from the two aliens that had descended, they only had about 5,000 units of power. It was only through technology far beyond his imagination that they had managed to negate his previous spatial slash. But what worked once might not work twice or a third time. Xiao Ran didn't believe their helmets could work indefinitely. However, his teleportation had a 0.5-second interval. Before he could move upwards, whoosh, another beam of light shot over. Did Xiao Ran have time to teleport? No. He had no choice but to open his space gate, holding it above his head like a shield. The light beam struck, but was completely swallowed by the space gate. He could now counterattack. However, buzz, buzz, buzz in the sky, one green spaceship after another appeared as if teleporting, materializing out of thin air. And on the ships, a group of aliens was analyzing the results on their electronic instruments. This organism just opened a high-dimensional gate. On the electronic screen, a hemispherical shield appeared. These aliens could actually detect the shape of the space gate. If Xiao Ran knew this, he would be utterly shocked. However, even if he knew now, he wouldn't be in the mood. Strange, why is this high-dimensional gate hemispherical? It doesn't matter. If it's not spherical, it has a flaw. Adjust the death ray's frequency to attack with diffuse reflection. Yes, sir. After his initial shock, Xiao Ran immediately fired the light beam he had captured from his alternate dimension. Boom! The speed of light is so fast that even those high-tech alien ships couldn't dodge it. They didn't even have time to react before being hit. Boom! A massive explosion erupted, and the ship disintegrated in the air, falling as countless fireballs. However, in the next second, dozens of ships in the sky fired simultaneously. The light beams came again. Xiao Ran once again opened his space gate to absorb them. However, when these light beams hit the top of the space gate, they paused, then exploded like bombs, turning into countless scattered light fragments that shot at him from all directions. Holy crap! Xiao Ran had no choice but to use a spatial swap again. Whoosh! He appeared 500 meters away. However, the ships in the sky immediately launched a second round of attacks. Teleportation had an interval, and so did spatial swap. Xiao Ran had no way to dodge anymore. The terrifying beams of light shot over. Xiao Ran couldn't dodge, couldn't avoid, and couldn't block. Was he going to die here? I'm not willing. My children haven't even been born. I will kill all these damn aliens. Boom! His intense thoughts seemed to transform into some kind of power. Xiao Ran entered a wondrous state, as if he had transcended this world. Everything that happened had nothing to do with him. He was like someone watching a movie. He could even rewind the movie's timeline. Rewind it to the very beginning. Then he fainted. Xiao Ran woke up with a splitting headache. He opened his eyes and found himself lying in bed. Swoosh! He immediately jumped up, taking a defensive stance. However, he was horrified to find that his powers were gone, and his physical strength had regressed to a very, very weak state. No, he still had power, but it had become 1 unit. Just 1 unit? His physical strength was also at the 1 unit level. Did the aliens capture me? No, that's not right. Xiao Ran looked around at his surroundings. This was the villa he had bought. A splitting headache. An incredibly absurd idea rose in Xiao Ran's mind. He got up and opened the window. Outside, a thick fog permeated the air, and he could occasionally hear the sound of hailstones falling, though sparsely, maybe one every few minutes, hitting the roof with a clang. Xiaowie, where are you? Xiao Ran shouted. I'm here. His phone, a short distance away, lit up, vibrated, and made a sound. Xiao Ran rushed over and picked up the phone. June 1 SD. The first day of the apocalypse. I was reborn again. No. I had it wrong from the very beginning. I wasn't reborn. I have a time ability. The first time I was killed by Zhang Wan's family, I used my time ability to return 3 months prior. Just now, when I was about to be killed by the aliens, it also triggered my time ability. So, there was no golden finger. His rebirth was because he had awakened a time ability. What about the space ability? Xiao Ran frowned. Did I awaken dual abilities from the start? Or did it manifest when I was messing with time? But the first time, I was sent back 3 months earlier. Does this mean that every time I rewind, I inevitably go back a little further? In that case, I don't have infinite reloads, because just over 8 months later, the alien invaders would appear. If he rewound again, would he appear 3 months later, leaving only 5 months before the alien invasion? Why do the aliens come? It must be for the abilities. So, it's destined that our two sides can't coexist peacefully. Although I didn't see it, I believe every city on the globe was destroyed by that devastating light beam. Those later ships must have received a distress signal and rushed over from all over the world. I only have 8 months. This time, I must become stronger than before, far, far stronger. Xiao Ran felt that although his ability level was 1 unit, all his abilities were still there, just that. Except for the space gate and spatial perception, the other abilities couldn't be activated. 1 unit of power was too weak to power them. And when Xiao Ran used his spatial perception to scan himself, he found that the little sapling in his mind had also come back with him. What the hell, what do I need you for? He nodded. The sapling probably wasn't a physical entity, but a manifestation of his ability, so it returned along with his other abilities like spatial, slash, and domain. He checked his alternate dimension again. Sure enough, weapons like the sonic rebar were gone, and so was the gasoline and diesel, but the food reserves were larger because they hadn't been consumed yet. In summary, apart from having memories of the next 8+ months and his new abilities, he was back to his state on the first day of the apocalypse. He needed to plan well. This time, he had to have 500,000 or even 1 million units of power by the time the aliens appeared. Woof woof. When Xiao Ran reached the ground floor, Baozi ran over, circling his feet. It meant I wanted to go out for a walk. Xiao Ran was deep in thought. So he leashed Baozi and went to the underground garage. Just like last time, the people from the complex were gathered in the garage. For now, they were only slightly worried, mostly curious, discussing when this strange fog would dissipate and when the temperature would rise again. Xiao Ran was completely lost in his own world. It was less like he was walking the dog, and more like the dog was leading him. The dog walking him sounded a bit off. Xiao Ran. Zheng Wan saw Xiao Ran and couldn't help but grit her teeth. Her call brought Xiao Ran back to his senses, and his face filled with displeasure. He had been making a plan, figuring out how to get stronger as fast as possible in these 8+ months, and had already planned out the next 3 months, only to be interrupted by his ex-wife's shout. What day was I planning up to? Extremely annoyed, Xiao Ran raised his hand and slapped her. Smack! Zheng Wan was knocked to the ground, half her face immediately swelling up. Xiao Ran, how dare you hurt someone? Pay up! Zheng Gang immediately jumped up, looking fierce as if he wouldn't let him go without a few million. Xiao Ran couldn't be bothered with them. He had already taken his revenge on his ex-wife's family and was in no mood to play the same game again. Bang! He threw another punch. Zheng Gang was sent stumbling back and fell on his butt, his eyes losing focus, clearly dazed from the blow. Seeing his fist raised again, Zheng Yujun was so scared he quickly retreated. Once he reached what he considered a safe distance, he said, Xiao Ran, you have no respect for the law. You just wait. I'm calling the police right now. Xiao Ran ignored him and continued walking Bowsy. After the dog had its fill, he took it back to the villa. He went upstairs, took out a pen, and started making notes, planning his next steps. Where would his second unit of power come from? The mutated husky. The timing was on the 20th day after the apocalypse. He went to the police station and met Jiang Yuning's group, along with a mutated husky. 20 days later? Too late. But when did people like Song Hui and Yang Wenchi awaken their powers? He hadn't asked before, so how would he know? So, if he went too early, they would still be ordinary people. Wouldn't that be a wasted trip? But to waste 19 days? Xiao Ran was unwilling. Although he could spend those 19 days playing cards with Han Yun and the others like last time, his mindset was different. The appearance of the aliens was like a sword hanging over his head. How could he relax and enjoy himself? Worrying won't help. Besides, the time to gain a massive amount of power is after the purple moon. At that time, any surviving human, no, any living creature, will gain 100 units of power. I will go on a killing spree for that one day and night. If I kill 10,000 people, I can get at least 1 million units of power. Xiao Ran tapped the paper with his pen. It seemed there was no other way for him to become drastically stronger in 8 months. Since that was the case, Xiao Ran smiled. He might as well have fun. Worrying was useless anyway. All right then. His advantage was that he didn't need to reawaken his various abilities. As long as his power level was high enough, he could use them, and he was already extremely proficient. Except for the little sapling. What the hell was that thing for? Beep beep beep. His phone buzzed. Lu Susu and Lu Mei sent him messages one after another, just like last time. Xiao Ran replied, tossed the phone aside, let his mind go blank, and slowly fell asleep. His body was indeed from this timeline, but his mind was not. Having just experienced the battle with the aliens and the shock they brought, he was exhausted and soon fell asleep. During the night, he woke up 3 times, sleeping restlessly. Finally, the long night passed. Day 2 of the apocalypse. Xiao Ran recalled what he was doing at this time last time. He wanted everything to proceed according to the established path, as much as possible, so that he could have full control. Then, all he would need to do was go on a killing spree on the night of the purple moon, collect enough power in one day and night, and then perform surgery on the ability users from Vietnam, Myanmar, and America. He could continuously improve, reaching 1 million, 2 million, or even 5 million units. He refused to believe that such strength couldn't deal with the alien ships. He remembered. He picked up his phone, took a few pictures of food, posted them in the group chat, and tagged Hanyan. However, Hanyan was still devoted to Lin Yue at this point. It would take another betrayal from Lin Yue for her to change. Tiring. Xiao Ran rubbed his temples. He really didn't want to go through something he had already done once. Maybe he should just bring her over directly? He'd think about it later. Xiao Ran took Baozi for a walk again. As expected, just like last time, he was stopped by a group of people demanding he hand over his food to get through the difficulties together. Naturally, Xiao Ran refused. The current Xiao Ran was different from before. Having experienced countless killings, his patience was exceptionally thin. If this group didn't know what was good for them and kept whining, he was prepared to kill. He had no interest in playing games with these people anymore. That night, he slept soundly. The next day, Xiao Ran's eyes shot open. Kill. He jumped up, then realized he was back on the timeline of the 3rd day of the apocalypse. He got up and went to brush his teeth, as usual. But as he was brushing, he suddenly froze, completely stunned. The little sapling had grown another section, and its root. The very tip had disappeared. It wasn't exactly gone. If it had disappeared, he wouldn't have noticed. It was swaying, and then the end of the root flickered in and out of existence. Was this probing into a higher dimension? Xiao Ran was thrilled. According to the historical process, Zhang Jingyao would deliver the goods at noon, but he was in no mood for that now. He sat down and carefully experienced it. Was it like the evolution fruit tree? Could he gain power through this? That would be amazing. Gaining strange matter on the third day of the apocalypse. Even if it was just 100 units of power, he could become an undisputed powerhouse. He could storm a sanatorium on West Mountain, wipe out Lu Yong and his group, and harvest another wave of power. Xiao Ran waited patiently, using his spatial perception to explore along the route. Because his current power was too weak, his spatial perception was very blurry. He didn't know how much time had passed when he heard a knock on the door, and his phone's alarm started going off. Zhang Jingyao was here. Xiao Ran completely ignored it. He silenced his phone and focused on exploring the route. After a short while, the knocking stopped. Zhang Jingyao had apparently given up and left dejectedly. Xiao Ran was completely unaware. Suddenly, he saw a whole new world. It was full of strange matter. Indeed, the sapling's root had pierced into a higher dimension, and a world full of strange matter at that. I've struck it rich. I'm going to be unbelievably powerful. I'm going to beat the crap out of those aliens. Xiao Ran tried to control the sapling to hook some of the strange matter. The sapling was his, whether it was an ability or something else. So, couldn't he control it? The root swayed gently, hooking, and suddenly it touched a clump. Xiao Ran immediately controlled the root to pull back. Instantly, a surge of power flooded him, washing over his entire body. Awesome. A terrifying energy washed over his body, and Xiao Ran almost passed out. You have to understand, his body was only at the 1 unit level, but how much strange matter had he extracted this time? Almost 100 units. What did that mean? 100-fold increase. His body was tempered by so much power that he almost exploded on the spot. If he exploded now, could he rewind time again? He didn't know, and Xiao Ran had no desire to try. Crack, crack, crack. His bones made popping sounds, almost breaking from the violent evolution, but thankfully he held on. An hour later, he passed out from the pain. When he slowly came to, Xiao Ran felt a deep ache in his bones and muscles, but his power had reached 101 units. When he extended his spatial perception, its maximum range had become 108 meters. Compared to his peak, this little progress was naturally insignificant. But Xiao Ran was ecstatic. What did this mean? It meant that in these 8+ months, he could become unimaginably powerful. That unknown higher dimension was full of strange matter, and it was all his. Let's get some more. Xiao Ran wanted to do it again, but found that the little sapling was dim, as if it had fallen into some kind of slumber, completely unresponsive to him. Does it need a rest? Continue tomorrow? No problem. Although he had only absorbed 100 units of power today, the sapling was constantly growing. As its roots burrowed deeper into the higher dimension, how much strange matter could it bring back for him? Tomorrow it might be 150 units, and the day after, 200 units? Then in 8+ months, how strong could he become? When he encountered the mutated husky again, could he kill it with a single thought? Definitely. Ha 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 ha. Xiao Ran had thought his final new ability was useless, but it turned out to be the most powerful one. This way, it wouldn't be long before he could use his spatial domain to teleport again. This time, I'll go to Japan first. Those 10 goddesses should all still be around, right? TSK. I can even blow up Mount Fuji again. Just thinking about it is a little exciting. In the future, if I'm bored, can I just rewind time to blow up Mount Fuji for fun? It's worth considering. The time ability, Xiao Ran recalled. Indeed, as the range of his spatial perception increased, there was a period when he couldn't process all the information within it. But later, when he processed information, it was as if time had slowed down or even stopped. I probably had already activated my time ability back then. It just seems to be a passive ability that I can't actively control. No, my abilities must obey my command. When my power increases a bit more, I'll try to see if I can actively use the time ability. For now, Xiao Ran smiled, took out a pile of food, took a picture, and posted it in the group chat again, tagging Hanyan. He could really enjoy himself now. He didn't want to break the trajectory of the previous timeline. He decided to act only at key moments, like going to find Jiang Yuning on the 20th day, go to Su University on the 24th day, killing people and collecting women at the corresponding times and places. Following the familiar path was the easiest. Once my power level reaches 10,000 units, I'll go to Japan to collect the goddesses. He could skip the other women in Japan, but he couldn't miss Myo Aena. That woman was truly top tier. As night fell, there was another knock on the basement door. Xiao Ran didn't even need the monitor. A sweep of his spatial perception told him who it was. It was Zhang Jingya again. Last time she came at noon, but now it was night. So be it. Xiao Ran opened the door and let Zhang Jingya in. Everything proceeded according to the script. Afterwards, Xiao Ran gave her a few packs of instant noodles and some water and sent her away. A night passed. Day 4 of the apocalypse. When Xiao Ran woke up, the first thing he did was check on the sapling. Sure enough, the sapling was shimmering with starlight, swaying gently, full of life and vitality. And its root had grown a bit longer. Xiao Ran was thrilled. This time, he would definitely be able to absorb more strange matter. Let's do it. Just like yesterday, he attached his spatial perception to the root and probed into the higher dimension. Clumps of strange matter filled this world, some large, some small. Yesterday's root was only about 3 centimeters long, but today it had reached 4 centimeters. In the grand scale of a dimension, this improvement was completely negligible. Since he only had a brief window of opportunity, he had to make a big score. Xiao Ran saw that once the sapling's root pierced into the higher dimension, it couldn't move its position. It could only use its short and weak 4-centimeter root to sway slightly. So, to obtain strange matter, he had to wait for it to come to him. This was feasible, because these clumps of strange matter were like plankton in the sea, constantly drifting. Xiao Ran waited, observing the sapling. Just probing into the higher dimension didn't consume any, energy, vitality, something like that from the sapling. It only consumed it when Xiao Ran tried to make the root move. That was fine then, he could wait. A clump of strange matter floated by. Xiao Ran ignored it. Another clump floated by, and he still didn't move. He had his eyes on a clump not far away, a very large one. He estimated that if he could get his hands on that clump, it would be at least 500 units. You're the one. Xiao Ran didn't greedily aim for the huge clump of strange matter dozens of meters away. It was probably at least 5,000 units. He could wait until tomorrow and still might not see it float over. Ambition is good, but too much is just greed. Here it comes. Here it comes. With a thought, Xiao Ran commanded the sapling to hook it. Got it. Come back. Instantly, the sapling's root returned to his mind, and with it came the clump of strange matter. Boom! Xiao Ran was once again baptized by the strange matter, and his power began to skyrocket. 500 units. Although today's harvest was larger than yesterday's, the impact he felt was smaller. Yesterday was a 100-fold increase. Today, a mere 5-fold. It was just that it took 3 days for the power to completely temper his body. Of course, continuous absorption would speed up the process, but Xiao Ran estimated his current physical strength was only around 80 units. It's fine. 80 units was already superhuman. Xiao Ran was delighted. Just then, he noticed someone approaching. Han Yun. According to the timeline, she would compromise today, and then tomorrow Lin Yue would find out, and Lin Yue's actions would cause Han Yun to turn to the dark side, becoming devoted to him from then on. All right, let's stick to the script. I'm too lazy to go through extra trouble. Han Yun came in, and everything happened just like last time. However, Xiao Ran felt an indescribable new freshness, almost making him keep her there. But after thinking about it, he still let her go back. After tomorrow, this woman would completely belong to him. If he kept her now, her heart would still be with Lin Yue. Han Yun, meanwhile, walked out in a daze. She had a very strange feeling. Xiao Ran was far too familiar with her body. But clearly, this was their first time. It was too strange. Holding a pile of food, she couldn't help but cry. She loved her husband deeply, but now she had to sell her body to feed her family. Through his spatial perception, Xiao Ran saw Han Yun's grievance, but he had no intention of comforting her. Tomorrow, this woman would change her mind. Lin Yue? What idiot. Xiao Ran mulled it over. Should he go out and have some fun today? He already had the strength for it. Not wanting to disrupt the timeline, he would go to Japan, America, or Britain. He could wreak as much havoc as he wanted there. He had never been to those places before, so he didn't need to worry about disrupting the timeline and causing some butterfly effect. He had indeed been to Japan, but he had only brought back 2 people, which was completely irrelevant. However, he was still a bit weak to go to Japan, and now, with a thick fog day and night, his spatial perception range was less than a kilometer. Setting out now would likely get him stranded at sea. It just wasn't necessary. He would gather Han Yun and the other girls first. They were all his. He couldn't miss a single one. Wait, something seemed wrong. Xiao Ran thought carefully and finally remembered. According to the last timeline, Zheng Wan's family should have come knocking on his door last night. But after he had given them a beating, the Zheng family had clearly chickened out and didn't make a move that night. Even after so much time had passed, and even though he now had many peerless goddesses, he couldn't help but feel a surge of anger whenever he thought of the Zheng family. After all, he had been their live-in son-in-law for 5 years, and for 5 whole years, he had been treated like a beast of burden. Then I'll just kill you all one more time. That night, Xiao Ran slept soundly. The next day, he first used the little sapling's ability to extract strange matter. Today's luck was not good. There were no large clusters of strange matter near where the sapling's roots had plunged. Left with no choice, Xiao Ran had to settle for a relatively larger cluster. 200 units. It was actually a huge increase from the first day, but compared to yesterday, it was less than half. With a total of 800 units of power, he was quite pleased. Time to take the leopard for a walk. Xiao Ran took the leopard to the garage, where many people once again blocked his path. Some wanted to buy his food, while others were shameless, telling him to donate it for everyone to share. Xiao Ran, of course, ignored them all and said, "Want something to eat? Fine. If a beautiful woman comes over, I might consider it." Then, he had an unexpected encounter with Lin Yue's family. Just like last time, Lin Yue started his verbal assault, deliberately calling Xiao Ran Xiao 500 million and mocking him for winning the lottery for nothing, since he now had money but nowhere to spend it. Xiao Ran thought for a moment and suddenly decided he didn't want to follow the script completely. What did he have to fear now? He was overwhelmingly powerful. Xiao Ran grinned, revealing a wicked smile. After so many life and death experiences, what did he care about good and evil or morality? "Did you know your wife came to see me yesterday?" Xiao Ran said leisurely. "Bullshit. How could Lin Yue possibly believe that?" He immediately started cursing. Xiao Ran wore an expression of pity for an imbecile and smiled. "Your wife has a red mole in the cleft of her buttocks, about the size of a soybean." Lin Yue first froze, then his face flushed crimson. This was in public. With no warning whatsoever, a green hat had been placed squarely on his head. What the fuck? Lin Yue whipped his head toward Han Yun, his whole body trembling. You said you were going out to buy food yesterday. Did you sleep with him?" Han Yun's body swayed, and she almost fainted. She stared angrily at Xiao Ran. How could this guy reveal their relationship? What should she do? What could she do? It's true. It's actually true. Lin Yue was devastated. He truly couldn't believe it. His wife hadn't left him even at his lowest point, but just a few days into the cataclysm, Han Yun had already cuckolded him. "Honey, I was wrong. I'll never ask him for food again." Han Yun quickly tried to comfort and apologize, but Lin Yue shoved her away, saying viciously, "Get lost, you slut." In front of everyone, he couldn't afford to lose this much face. What was the point of having a wife like this? He looked at Xiao Ran. "You like this whore? Fine, I'll sell her to you. Give me the villa, and this woman is yours. You've had a taste of her, so you know she's worth it, right?" Ha ha ha. Han Yun felt as if she had been struck by lightning, staring at Lin Yue in disbelief. Did he really just say that? She couldn't believe it, and she didn't want to believe it. "Xiao Ran, want to trade?" Lin Yue shouted. "If you don't, haha, fine. I know there are plenty of men here who want to sleep with my wife. Since this slut doesn't respect herself, I might as well sell her to someone else. Anyone want to sleep with this slut? Just 2 packs of instant noodles or food of equivalent value." As his words fell, many men's eyes lit up with interest. In the entire residential complex, what man didn't want to sleep with this bewitching young madam? Only 2 packs of instant noodles. It would have been unthinkable before, but now they had to weigh their options. After all, food represented life. But after only a moment's hesitation, at least 50 or 60 men shouted at the same time, "I want to sleep with her. I want to sleep with her." Han Yun's face instantly turned ashen. At that moment, she felt a numbness, as if her heart had died. Lin Yue, however, chuckled and looked at Xiao Ran again. "So, are you going to trade the villa for her now?" "You're not worthy." Xiao Ran sneered. With a thought, a bullet shot out silently. A bullet hole appeared on Lin Yue's forehead, and he collapsed to the ground, his eyes still wide open as if in disbelief that he had died just like that. Xiao Ran pulled Han Yun into his arms and scanned the crowd. "This is my woman. If anyone dares to speak disrespectfully again, Lin Yue is your example." Han Yun was held tightly by him, and her numb heart stirred slightly. Her husband had sold her out in public, but Xiao Ran? He was protecting her. The comparison. She quickly pushed the chaotic thoughts from her mind, but because she had been in a daze, she hadn't even noticed that Lin Yue had been killed. The others, however, had seen it clearly. Lin Yue had suddenly fallen to the ground, and they could faintly see blood flowing out. Was he dead? But how'd he die? They hadn't seen Xiao Ran make a move at all. However, Lin Yue had made his offer. Anyone could sleep with Han Yun for 2 packs of instant noodles. This had opened a floodgate, instantly unleashing their pent-up desires. Today was already the 5th day, but the toxic hail hadn't stopped, the thick fog hadn't lifted, and there was no sign of the government's rescue. How could this not drive people to despair? In desperation, people lose their minds, and all the negative emotions they had accumulated would erupt. They wanted to sleep with Han Yun. If the cataclysm wasn't going to end, and they were doomed to starve or freeze to death, then they had to sleep with this woman at least once. At least they could have one hell of a good time before they died. Desire is a double-edged sword. It can have a positive effect, promoting human development, but it is also full of destructive power. The outbreak of wars and the like is, to a large extent, just to satisfy the desires of certain people. The number of people who have died because of desire throughout history is countless. It happened in history, and it's happening now. In the garage, at least several dozen men began to surround Xiao Ran, each one of them radiating killing intent. Today, they were determined to get what they wanted. Xiao Ran dare to stop them? Kill him. You're just one person. No matter how strong you are, can you take down dozens of able-bodied men at once? No, they should just kill Xiao Ran. His villa seemed to have a large amount of supplies. Once this thought arose, they could no longer control their desires. Even if Xiao Ran handed over Han Yun now, they had no intention of letting him go. You all stay back. Zhang Jingya's voice trembled. Every one of these men was like a wild beast, making her heart palpitate with utter fear. Han Yun was also shivering. She knew these men had gone mad. Now, there was no law to restrain them. Once the door to their inner desires was opened, it would be difficult to close it again. She would be tortured to death. No, she didn't want to die like that. Her eyes darted around, searching for a tool to commit suicide. But Xiao Ran seemed to be able to see her thoughts. He waved his hand and slapped her on her perky buttocks. What nonsense are you thinking? With me here, who can hurt you? His words were full of confidence, which surprisingly managed to infect Han Yun, calming her down slightly. But only a little. Xiao Ran felt no need to explain, just smiled confidently. In the first timeline, he only had 1 unit of power, and just the space gate ability. He wasn't afraid of a frontal conflict, but he was worried about a sneak attack from behind. After all, in the midst of a chaotic battle, it would be difficult to protect himself completely. But this time was different. 800 units of power, ever heard of it? Even without using his powers, he could easily defeat all these people with his physical strength alone. These men had now completely devolved into beasts controlled by desire, their eyes glowing with a ferocious light as they continuously closed in on Xiao Ran. Suddenly, several people roared and lunged at Xiao Ran. Han Yun and Zhang Jingya screamed simultaneously. Then, they saw a scene they could only have dreamed of. Xiao Ran casually waved his hand as if swinging an iron rod. Bang, bang, bang. 3 men were immediately sent flying. Crack, crack, crack. The sound of breaking bones was incessant. The heads and waists of the 3 men were bent at grotesque angles. Then, the 3 men fell to the ground, lying or sprawling in bizarre positions, unable to move a single finger. Dead. Hiss. What kind of monster was this? With 3 men dead, and in such a manner, everyone was naturally stunned. Fear immediately took over their minds, driving out their desires completely. They shivered, no longer daring to move forward, and instead began to retreat. Xiao Ran beamed. Since we're doing this all over again, the scenes for you small fries can be completely cut. It won't affect the main plot anyway. What was his so-called main plot? Picking up girls, of course. The crowd couldn't understand what he was saying, but the calmer Xiao Ran was, the more panicked they became. Suddenly, the people at the very back turned around and bolted. Why are you running? Xiao Ran said with a smile, activating space cutting. As the crowd ran, their eyes suddenly rolled back, and they collapsed to the ground, motionless. Xiao Ran had delivered about 50 cuts in a row and felt a significant drain on his power. But besides him, Han Yun, and Zhang Jingya, there wasn't a single living person nearby. In the distance, some elderly people who had been gossiping or walking their dogs fainted from shock at the sight. Let's go home. He scooped Han Yun into his arms and walked towards the villa. Woof woof. The leopard barked twice, seeming a bit puzzled. Why was its master bringing back 2 people? Oh, it had smelled them the day before yesterday and yesterday. They must be mating partners its master had found. Zhang Jingya quickly followed, still in a daze. Upon entering the villa, an incredible warmth enveloped them. Only then did Han Yun and Zhang Jingya slowly come back to their senses. Xiao Ran smiled and said, I have superpowers. With that, he demonstrated by making things appear out of thin air. Then with a thought, his body instantly levitated. His domain could now extend over a meter. Although pitifully small, it didn't stop him from being like a god within that small range. Han Yun and Zhang Jingyao were once again dumbfounded. Xiao Ran didn't care. He tossed them into the bathtub. They needed a good wash. He hadn't had his fun yet today. Han Yun was a bit frantic. It was normal. Anyone would be deeply shaken after being backstabbed by their husband. A night passed. Xiao Ran locked himself in the basement. He was going to use the little sapling to steal strange matter from the high-dimensional world again, a process that naturally could not be disturbed. Begin. When Xiao Ran followed the sapling's tendrils into the high dimension, he found that its root system had grown another centimeter. It seemed this wasn't affected by his power, but changed completely with the passage of time. When he rewound time, the sapling state returned with him, so if he rewound time again, would the sapling already have grown into a towering tree? Once or twice wouldn't do it, but 10 or 8 times definitely would. How much strange matter could he obtain at one time then? That wasn't right either. If he had to move forward a bit each time he rewound time, it wouldn't take many times to reach the node of the alien invasion. He actually couldn't do it many times. I have to deal with these aliens. That way, I'll have enough time. Today, his luck was off the charts. Right next to the sapling's roots was a huge cluster of strange matter, even bigger than the one from the day before yesterday. At least 3,000 units. It was just that this cluster was drifting too slowly. Xiao Ran waited patiently. A full 2 hours later, he suddenly controlled the sapling's roots to hook it. Got it. Instantly, a massive amount of power surged through his entire body. About 3,100 units. Xiao Ran laughed heartily. Now his power level was close to 4,000. One must remember, before his battle with Duan Chong, he had only a little over 2,000 units, and when he went to Haidu, it was only around 6,000. And now, he had reached 4,000 units in just 6 days. On Earth, he should be the absolute, invincible king. People like Liu Yong, Wei Lili, Duan Chong, and Oda Shiri, who could once fight him, could now all be killed with a single thought. Wu Shanglong didn't have to die. Xiao Ran grinned. The greatest benefit of the time ability was that it allowed him to fix his regrets. He opened the door and went up to the first floor, where he saw Han Yun and Zhang Jingyao waiting with eager anticipation. Did he eat breakfast? He waved his hand grandly, but seeing only 2 girls made him feel a slight regret. It seemed he had to speed up his progress. Xiao Ran couldn't leave the residential complex just yet. There were still 3 more girls to collect here. Zhonglei, Wang Lulu, and Su Ching May. Zhonglei and Wang Lulu didn't matter much, but Su Ching May was his designated head of the harem, so she was not to be missed. Then let's bring Zhonglei and Wang Lulu over first. Would killing Liu Bingsheng ahead of time have any major impact? No, not at all. So, he couldn't be bothered to follow the last timeline step by step, and instead skipped the tedious plot to get straight to the point. Zhonglei was easy to handle. He just had to toss her into the villa. Such good conditions made it impossible for her to refuse. Next was Wang Lulu. Xiao Ran went directly to Wang Lulu's house. Outside, with a thought, bang, 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 everyone inside except Wang Lulu died without a sound. Their brains were sliced. How could they not die? A moment later, he saw Wang Lulu run out, her face filled with terror. He approached her, acting as if he were helping. Thus, Wang Lulu was also brought to his villa. Once he revealed his powers and tossed a large amount of supplies in front of her, would this woman still ask to leave? Of course not. Not bad for girls now. Next up was waiting for Su Ching May. Oh, in between, there was that Japanese female assassin. What was her name again? Akai Sakari. Yes, that was the name. As for the young Madame Lin Lin and the like, forget it. He couldn't be bothered. Su Ching May was supposed to come looking for him to borrow a car on the 21st day of the apocalypse. It was only the 6th day now, still a long way to go. First to Qinghong Building, then to Dongshan's Qingfeng Garden. It's getting a bit late today, I'll go tomorrow. Xiao Ran looked at the 4 women in the house and had a bold idea. A night passed, and Xiao Ran once again experienced extreme pleasure. And the 4 women were all a bit shy and awkward, which gave him a long-lost sense of novelty. Nice. Xiao Ran once again entered the basement alone, closed the door, and began to use the little sapling's ability. A daily dose keeps you healthy. This time, his luck was also good. Although it couldn't compare to yesterday, Xiao Ran still managed to hook a cluster of about 800 units of strange matter. 4,700 units now. Most of the big shots from the last timeline probably hadn't even become powered individuals yet. TSK. Xiao Ran went to the first floor, first leaving a large amount of food for the 4 women, then used space swap. Swoosh! He disappeared from his spot and reappeared 100 meters away. Awesome! Han Yun and the other 3 women were all amazed. After a moment, they said, "Is that guy even human? Do you guys find it strange that he seems to know us very well?" "Yes, he knows exactly where my sensitive spots are. He got me right away, ooh." Instantly, overcome with embarrassment, the 4 women started a pillow fight. Xiao Ran didn't use space swap for the entire journey. The number of uses was limited, and so was his power. How could he squander like that? He wasn't in a hurry. He opened his spatial perception, tracking the fall of the toxic hailstones, easily avoiding them. With his current physical fitness, this 10-kilometer journey was a piece of cake. Even without going at full speed, it only took him 10 minutes to reach Xinghong Building. He hummed a little tune as he went upstairs, opened a secret passage, and walked in grandly. Instantly, a group of people surrounded him. "Who are you? How did you find this place?" they exclaimed. Xiao Ran smiled faintly, snapped his fingers, and everyone fell to the ground dead. In front of the big shot with nearly 5,000 units of power, were these ordinary people not meant to be one shot? Would take several moves? Just then, Yu Jiaqing finally rushed out. To Xiao Ran's surprise, he had actually become a powered individual. But so what? Xiao Ran sent a space cutting slash, and the old man was gone. Having a danger premonition was useless. The power gap was too great. It was like being told a bullet was coming from a certain direction. Could you dodge it? He entered that room that drove men to ecstasy. He couldn't help it. He had absorbed Yu Jiaqing's power. Even if it was just 1 unit, the necessary side effects still appeared. "Teachers, here I come." After his fun, Xiao Ran was a bit worried. How was he going to transport these people back? It hadn't snowed yet, so the hovercraft couldn't be used. How could he transport 12 people back? Forget it. Let Yin Shien and the others live here for now. He could also have them start evolving. He was now a big shot with nearly 5,000 units and was getting stronger every day. He could easily help them through it. Once they became powered individuals, he could take them away. Xiao Ran displayed his powers, and Yin Shien and the others were naturally shocked. After hearing that Xiao Ran could help them become such new humans, they readily accepted. Xiao Ran didn't mention the consequences of a failed evolution, because with his involvement, the worst that could happen was they'd remain ordinary people and wait for the golden snowflakes to appear. Speaking of which, he shouldn't have to go all the way to Haidu to encounter the first golden snowflake this time, right? After having Yin Shien and the others start their evolution, Xiao Ran returned to the villa. He thought about it and decided to have the 4 women start their evolution tomorrow. After all, the 2 places were still about 10 kilometers apart, so staggering it by a day would be safer. But because of today's events, he didn't have time to go to Qingfeng Garden. "I'll go tomorrow." Since he had now taken over the Chong family mansion, he couldn't bring the people from there over anyway. No rush. The evening was naturally joyous. Xiao Ran spent a wonderful night, and then the apocalypse quietly entered its 7th day. Today's luck was particularly bad. Xiao Ran only got 120 units of power. Xiao Ran set off for Qingfeng Garden, of course collecting energy along the way. He took his time, but it only took him 5 hours to reach Qingfeng Garden. The long-missed Qingfeng Garden. Xiao Ran sighed with emotion and arrived at the Chong family mansion. First, there was a clamor, but it quickly returned to silence. The entire mansion was left with only 6 living people. Last time it was 4. Why was it 6 this time? Because before, 2 maids had been chosen to serve in bed and had also attacked Xiao Ran, so he had casually killed them. This time, they didn't attack, so he couldn't be bothered to do it. It was just a matter of feeding 2 more people. A small matter. He went to Zhuang Jiaqin's house again, and so, old Zhuang died once more. The last time he died at the hands of 114, but this time it was Xiao Ran. It made up for the regret of not killing old Zhuang last time. Xiao Ran cleared out the entire Qingfeng Garden, killing almost all the men, leaving only the women with little to no combat ability. The only man left was Xia Chuchio's grandfather. Xiao Ran also sent Guo Meiyao to stay at the mansion to make it easier for him to manage them all. As for Xia Chuchio, how to trick this girl? Before, it was because her grandfather died that Xiao Ran took advantage of the situation, but Xiao Ran couldn't just let her grandfather die again for that reason, could he? Ordinary people didn't matter, but Grandpa Xia was a retired veteran, and Xiao Ran held him in high regard. He couldn't cross that line. No matter, he was so powerful, couldn't he trick a little girl? Killing Chong Yingxiong and absorbing his power, although only a paltry 1 unit, still had side effects. Xiao Ran had to go and take care of it. Couldn't be helped, right? And it had to be said, Guo Yao truly lived up to her reputation as someone from the entertainment industry. Although her face turned green at first, she adjusted within a few minutes, sweetly calling him husband and brother. If it made Xiao Ran happy, she wasn't against calling him daddy either. Xiao Ran went to the Xia family's house again, left some supplies, and showed off his powers. As expected, that girl Xia Chuchio's eyes immediately lit up, and she was already interested in him. When a woman becomes interested in a man, that's a great start. Strike while the iron is hot a few more times, and he could probably win her over. He couldn't let any of his women get away. Xiao Ran calculated that it would still be a long time before that crazy woman, 114, came to kill him, and he had no intention of giving her the chance. He would go to West Mountain later and take care of that group of lunatics. The sky had already darkened by now, but that was no obstacle for Xiao Ran. Since it was a thick fog day and night anyway, what was the difference? He arrived at West Mountain, and after a short tour, Lu Yong and the others would never appear in this world again. It was just that. He had unavoidably absorbed a few more units of power, and there were side effects again. Sigh, it's really not my fault I'm so lustful. Xiao Ran muttered to himself as he rushed back to Qing Foam Garden. Guo, the big star, and the others naturally received another stormy baptism, but Xiao Ran wouldn't treat them poorly. He brought out steaming hot and delicious food, and the 7 women were so grateful they practically wanted to call him daddy on the spot. In a flash, another night passed. Xiao Ran, of course, prioritized improving himself. Today's luck was excellent. Xiao Ran obtained a cluster of strange matter with a full 2,100 units. It wasn't his biggest haul, but it could rank second, which was very good. Xiao Ran went to the Xia family's house for another round, reinforcing Xia Chuchio's impression of him, and then returned to the 9 Blessings community. Today, that Japanese assassin would arrive. Unlike last time, after subduing the female assassin, Xiao Ran didn't deliver a fatal blow. Instead, he used his terrifying strength to make Akai Sakari completely obedient. This nation was inherently one to bully the weak and fear the strong. When Xiao Ran displayed his inhuman power, Akai Sakari naturally became as docile as a little kitten. It wasn't that Xiao Ran cared that much about her, but this time he was preparing to go to Japan early, and having a translator proficient in both Chinese and Japanese would be quite useful. Xiao Ran also had her begin her evolution. Counting the days, it seemed like there wasn't much else he needed to do. Then he would just wait. Su Ching May was coming soon. Xiao Ran used the little sapling to fish for strange matter every day. In a flash, 10 days passed, and he had accumulated a total of 8,000 units of power. How terrifying was that? His total power reached 14,921 units. It had only been 19 days since the apocalypse began. Last time, he would have had to wait until tomorrow to go to the police station, where he would encounter that mutated husky and finally learn that there were other powered individuals and mutated beasts outside. But now, he was already a big shot with over 10,000 units. Last time, the number 1 person in China, on paper, only had a 10,000 unit level at the time of his death. Utterly invincible. And Han Yun and the other women had already completed their evolution. Although they started earlier this time, the result was no different from last time. Those who were supposed to awaken powers did, and the types of powers were completely unchanged. Bang! The sound of a car crash came. Xiao Ran knew that Su Ching May had arrived. He immediately used a space swap to rush out, standing beside the prison van. The van door opened, and 9 women stumbled out. Su Ching May, she's here. A wicked, charming smile tugged at the corner of Xiao Ran's lips. Huh. Seeing Xiao Ran, all 9 women were startled. In such freezing weather, Xiao Ran was only wearing a thin autumn shirt. Was he a lunatic? Xiao Ran couldn't be bothered with nonsense. With a wave of his hand, all 8 women, except for Su Ching May, tilted their heads, their bodies went limp, and they fell to the ground, dead. Su Ching May almost screamed, but her reaction was faster. The gun was already in her hand, aimed at Xiao Ran. Xiao Ran smiled. Go on, shoot. Su Ching May took a deep breath to calm herself, and said in a low voice, You think I don't dare? Xiao Ran took a step forward. Stop! Su Ching May shouted loudly. If you dare take one more step, I will definitely shoot. Xiao Ran smiled and continued to walk forward. Su Ching May gritted her teeth and decisively pulled the trigger. Bang! 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 In Xiao Ran's vision, golden bullets flew towards him as if time had slowed down. He calmly reached out, catching them one by one, all of them in his hand. Su Ching May had emptied her magazine, only to find in horror that Xiao Ran was still standing there perfectly fine. Even more, Xiao Ran opened his cupped hand, and a handful of bullets clattered to the ground. She was utterly horrified. Xiao Ran smiled. Don't be nervous. My name is Xiao Ran. I've actually known you for a long time. Your name is Su Ching May, and you broke out of prison this time to find your sister. Also, your sister's name is Su Ran, and she's currently studying at Su University. Su Ching May stared at him blankly, her face a mask of disbelief. Xiao Ran smiled faintly. I have a car. I can take you to Su City. With that, he waved his hand, and Mercedes G-Wagon appeared out of thin air. Su Ching May's mouth once again formed an O. Get in. What are you standing there for? Xiao Ran sat in the driver's seat. Su Ching May hesitated for a moment, but then gritted her teeth and got into the passenger seat. Please fasten your seatbelt. Xiao Ran started the engine, but didn't step on the gas. Su Ching May pulled the seatbelt across her and immediately felt Xiao Ran's gaze sweep over her chest. She was well endowed, and the seatbelt made it incredibly conspicuous. However, she was in no mood to care. Instead, she asked in a low voice, how do you know my identity, and guess what I'm going to do? What if I told you I'm someone who came back from the future, and everything I know about you is what you told me? Would you believe me? Xiao Ran asked in return. Su Ching May just sneered. You think I believe that? You think this is a sci-fi movie? Xiao Ran suddenly slammed on the brakes, but Su Ching May only jiggled slightly, as the car wasn't moving fast. He pointed out the window. Look at what? Xiao Ran had thrown Yu Jiaqing's body onto the snow. Seeing him conjure something out of thin air again, Su Ching May was deeply shocked. But when she saw the body's face, her little mouth opened wide. Yu Jiaqing, the culprit who got you thrown in jail? The old bastard who said he wanted your sister to bear his son? I've already taken care of him for you, Xiao Ran said with a smile. No need to thank me. In the future, you were my woman anyway. How dare he have designs on my woman? Should I have kept him around for New Year's instead of killing him? Su Ching May pondered for a moment. You say you're from the future, and you're my man? Then do you know if I have a red mole on my chest? Xiao Ran burst out laughing. He grabbed Su Ching May from the passenger seat. His strength was terrifying now. He could lift an entire building, let alone a single person. Amidst Su Ching May's terror, he bit her ear and said, You don't have a red mole on your chest. However, you do have a black mole right here. When his hand pressed on her lower abdomen, Su Ching May was truly stunned. It's not just you, but your sister too, Xiao Ran said leisurely. That red mole you mentioned is on Su Ran's chest. To be precise, it's in this position. He pressed on Su Ching May's chest again. Also, she has a birthmark on her thigh, only about the size of a fingernail. Su Ching May's whole body trembled, because Xiao Ran was absolutely right. Could this man really be from the future? But according to him, she and her sister would serve the same man? Her face couldn't help but turn pale. According to the normal timeline, you would have come to borrow my car the day after tomorrow. But I would only agree to go with you. Then we'd find your sister at Su University. Oh, and there's also a green tea bitch named Zhou Yunsu. Hee, she will also become your good sister, Xiao Ran said. Why would both my sister and I follow you? Su Ching May asked in a low voice. She was the calmest among Xiao Ran's women. Her will was tenacious, with a soldier-like demeanor. Look, Xiao Ran pointed out the window. This world is now completely a dog-eat-dog world. You two sisters are so beautiful. No matter whose hands you fall into, what do you think the outcome will be? Don't need to explain in detail. And me, of course, I'm no good person either, I admit that. However, I can provide you with everything you want, give you an incredibly prosperous life. Come on, what do you want? You can test me. Su Ching May thought for a moment. I want to eat a watermelon. Xiao Ran laughed heartily and took out a dong tai, exploding watermelon from his alternate space, handing it to her. I know you like durian the most, and your sister likes mangosteen the most. But this watermelon has thin skin and sweet juice. You should try it. After saying that, he even conjured a fruit knife. Su Ching May's will couldn't help but waver. You have countless supplies? She asked. Xiao Ran nodded. That's right. Before the apocalypse, I bought over 3 billion yuan worth of supplies, all stored in my personal space. So, how many supplies do you think I have? Hiss. Su Ching May bit her lip. Now she had no choice but to believe. If Xiao Ran was really from the future, what was so strange about him hoarding a massive amount of supplies? He could see the future. She was a decisive person and immediately made a decision. Help me find my sister, and we will follow you. In an apocalypse like this, there was probably no better choice than to follow such a prescient person. Xiao Ran beamed. It's a deal. He started the car. Although he didn't need a car to easily get to Su University, Su Ching May did. And later he had to bring Su Ran and Zhou Yunsa back as well. And teacher you. Since he was going, he might as well take care of everyone at once. Su Ching May was silent for a while, then suddenly asked, "Why did you come back from the future?" "As expected of you, so calm." Xiao Ran nodded. "The future, to be precise, in 8 months, aliens will come to our world. In an instant, they will kill all our cities, almost all the survivors. I came back from that point in time." "What?" Su Ching May's mouth fell open. "Wasn't that the end of the world? If so, what was the difference between dying later and dying sooner? Humanity could only survive for 8 more months at most." Xiao Ran laughed heartily. "Last time was last time, this time is this time. I will wipe out all of these green-furred bastards." He wasn't bragging. His newest ability gave him terrifying growth potential, plus the time ability. If he could develop it, then it would be impossible for him not to be invincible. Before Su Ching May could dwell on his words, she suddenly pointed ahead. "Be careful." The road ahead was blocked, littered with cars lying every which way. It was completely jammed. Xiao Ran didn't hit the brakes. Instead, he smiled. "Let me show you what your man is capable of." He just waved his hand through the window, and bang, bang, bang. All the cars blocking the way were pushed to the sides, forcefully clearing a path. Su Ching May watched, dumbfounded, as if witnessing a miracle. Xiao Ran was very satisfied with her reaction and smiled. "You're already so surprised you can't close your mouth? What if I did this?" He opened his space domain, and the G-Wagon flew straight up into the air. "Oh my god! Oh my god!" Su Ching May was finally completely convinced. Her gaze towards Xiao Ran became extremely complicated. Today was her first time meeting Xiao Ran. Yet he said he had known her for a long time, was even her man, and had revealed secrets that only she should know. Coupled with such magical abilities, how great was the impact on her? It was a pity. If only this man was hers alone. Thinking this, she quickly berated herself for being selfish. Shouldn't a man like this be for her sister? How could she think of herself first? Xiao Ran brought the G-Wagon back down to the ground. Although he could now maintain his space domain for 30 minutes, it was just for showing off. Did he need to consume his power like that? Soon, they arrived at the East Campus of Su University. Xiao Ran drove straight in and stopped in front of a cafeteria. "Is Shinran here?" Su Ching May asked. She now believed at least 99% of what Xiao Ran said. Xiao Ran shook his head. "In another cafeteria, but there's someone here who needs to be slaughtered first." He walked in and came out less than half a minute later, getting back in the car. "Let's go." He had absorbed another power. But it didn't matter. There would be 4 girls in the car soon. He drove to the second cafeteria. Su Ching May immediately got out of the car and ran towards the cafeteria. "Shinran," she shouted. "Sister? Sister?" Su Shinran was stunned for a moment, then immediately came out to meet her. Xiao Ran also slowly walked in. He saw the Su sisters hugging, just like last time. But this time, Song Hui hadn't gone out to look for food. His eyes were circling over Su Ching May, a faint smile on his lips. This beauty was his too. Xiao Ran coughed. "Since we found her, let's go." Su Ching May nodded and quickly took Su Shinran's hand. "Shinran, let's go." Su Shinran naturally listened to her sister and was about to leave. But how could Song Hui let her go? He wanted both of them. Wait. He blocked their way. "You can't leave." He felt he'd been too kind, feeding these people for several days without making any demands. Not anymore. If they wanted him to support them, they had to pay the price. A physical price. "I've fed you for so many days. You think you can just leave when you want?" he said coldly. Su Shinran couldn't believe it. "Song Hui, what are you trying to do?" "What am I trying to do?" Song Hui laughed loudly. "If you ate my food and drank my water, you have to sleep with me." He stared at Su Shinran, no longer hiding his burning lust. "How much food did she eat?" Xiao Ran asked. "I'll pay for her." With a casual wave of his hand, a large amount of instant noodles, biscuits, and clean water instantly appeared on the ground. This, making food appear out of thin air? Everyone stared with wide eyes, looking as if they'd seen a ghost. Song Hui, however, frowned. "You're a powered individual too. Making supplies appear out of thin air. This was a space ability." He immediately regained his arrogance. A space ability could at best be used as a warehouse. Could it be used for combat? "So, did you come here to deliver supplies to me?" "Haha, thank you very much for that." Song Hui completely disregarded Xiao Ran and was about to kill him with an ice cone to get his loot. However, when he shot the ice cone, it was like a clay ox entering the sea, causing not even a ripple. What was going on? His eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost. Xiao Ran smiled faintly, reached out his hand, and activated space compression. Splat. Song Hui was compressed into a pancake of blood. "Ugh, I'll pass on this power." Xiao Ran's gaze swept around and saw Zhou Yunsu walking towards him, her beautiful eyes shining. He couldn't help but smile. Are you planning to follow me? Brother, you're so amazing. I haven't even said anything, and you've already guessed. Zhou Yunsu looked at him with adoration. The performance has begun. Xiao Ran laughed heartily. How could his harem not include this little green tea? Come on. Xiao Ran beckoned. Zhou Yunsu walked over in a bit of daze. She hadn't even deployed her tea skills yet. How was Xiao Ran already taking her with him? Sister. Su Ran quickly nudged Su Ching May. This is your boyfriend, yet he's flirting with another woman right in front of you. And it's even Zhou Yunsu, the person she hates the most. Aren't you going to do something? Su Ching May gave a bitter smile. How could you do anything? She hadn't even known Xiao Ran for more than 3 hours. However, a thought crossed her mind, and she asked Su Ran, who is she? Zhou Yunsu. She's always going against me. She's so annoying, Su Ran said resentfully. It really was her. Su Ching May was a bit lost. Was Xiao Ran really from the future? Let's go. She pulled her sister's hand. They got into the G-Wagon, but Xiao Ran didn't immediately drive back to the Nine Blessings community. Instead, he headed toward the teaching building. There was one more girl. It was Teacher Yu, the one who could make little brother Xiao Ran stand up. Now that Song Hui was dead, he couldn't force Huang Lingcheng to sell out his fiancée. So, he would have to be the bad guy himself. He had Su Ching May and the other 2 girls wait for him in the car. The heater was on full blast, and the G-Wagon had been modified, so its insulation was top-notch. There was no need to worry about them freezing to death. He also left them some food and water to tide them over. After parking the car at the base of the teaching building, he got out and used a space swap to appear outside a certain office. Yin Tong was here. He knocked on the door. Is anyone in there? Oh, who is it? A man's voice came from inside. Huang Lingcheng. Bang. Xiao Ran kicked open the locked door. Huang Lingcheng was just walking over, but was startled back by the suddenly opened door. On the other hand, Yin Tong bravely took a few steps forward. What do you want? To take you with me, Xiao Ran said with a smile. Long story short, I'm a super soldier from the future, and you are my woman. Bullshit. What future soldier? You really think, just because a cataclysm happened, we've entered a sci-fi movie? Huang Lingcheng cursed. Xiao Ran smiled faintly and gently lifted his hand. The nearby office desk floated into the air. What the fuck? Huang Lingcheng's mouth hung open, looking as if he'd seen a ghost. Teacher Huang, you have 2 choices now. One is to give your fiancé to me. The other is I kill you. You choose, Xiao Ran said directly. With that, he clenched his right hand, and bang, the office desk shattered into dust. It was made of solid wood. Huang Lingcheng was completely dumbfounded. If Xiao Ran used such a method on him, he couldn't help but tremble and involuntarily said, Don't kill me. Don't kill me. Although he didn't directly state his choice, such words of pleading were equivalent to making one. Yin Tong felt as if she had been severely backstabbed. Her face flushed red with anger. However, she had always disliked her fiancé's character. If it weren't for Huang Lingcheng's father using both hard and soft tactics, she wouldn't have agreed to be engaged to him. But after being backstabbed like this, she naturally made a clean break with him. Come on, Teacher Yu. Xiao ran through a small stone, activated space swap, and the next moment Yin Tong appeared in his arms. He opened his space domain, and swoosh, the next moment he was in the stairwell. And with a passing thought, Huang Lingcheng also fell to the ground with a thud, his life extinguished. Let me go. Let me go. Yin Tong struggled violently. Xiao Ran ignored her, carried her out of the teaching building, went straight to the car, and threw her into the back seat. Teacher Yu. Su Ran and Zhou Yunsu exclaimed at the same time. Xiao Ran smiled faintly. Good, everyone's here. Let's go home. On the way, Xiao Ran spoke of his future soldier, identity, and also revealed the private characteristics of Su Ran, Zhou Yunsu, and Yin Tong, as well as secrets they had never told anyone, making the 3 women half believe and half doubt him. And when Xiao Ran demonstrated his powers again, the 3 women's belief in his words naturally increased by several notches. After bringing the girls back to the villa, Xiao Ran was in no hurry to feast. They were all his people, why rush? Let's see, how many girls were still missing? There was still Officer Jiang, Xia Chuqiu, Lawyer Liu, and Tu Xinyue. The rest would have to be found in Haidu. Officer Jiang needed to be brought back quickly. Xia Chuqiu's walkthrough had already started. Lawyer Liu and Tu Xinyue could hold on for a long time, so let them be educated by the apocalypse for a while. There was no hurry to bring them over. Then tomorrow, I'll go find Jiang Yuning. According to the last timeline, he did indeed go to the police station tomorrow. So, he would make a trip tomorrow. After a wild night, where Xiao Ran only ate the passionate little green tea, he began to fish for strange matter. Heavens! Xiao Ran was overjoyed, because today, where the little sapling's roots were, there was a very, very large cluster of strange matter nearby. If he could get this cluster, it would probably be 8,000 or even 10,000 units. A jackpot! A jackpot! Xiao Ran was incredibly patient, waiting for the cluster of strange matter to drift closer, and then he commanded the roots to hook it. Got it! He retreated, and instantly he was baptized by an astonishing amount of power. Over 9,800 units. Xiao Ran revealed a smile. Now his power level was close to 25,000. He remembered that when he wiped out the Black Dragon Society, his power level was only around that much. Let's go to the police station to bring Officer Jiang back. In just half a day, Xiao Ran returned. Naturally, there was one more person with him. Officer Jiang. All right, tomorrow I'll go to Haidu, wipe out the Black Dragon Society ahead of schedule, bring Shu Ruaji and the foreign girl back, and then head to Japan. In the morning, Xiao Ran fished for strange matter, as usual. This time, his luck wasn't too good, only catching 1,000 units. But as the little sapling's roots grew longer and longer, the fishing range also expanded, meaning his harvest would undoubtedly get bigger and bigger. Xiao Ran went to Haidu. He continuously activated space swap, advancing 100 meters each time. His daily usage count was an astonishing 2,400 plus, meaning he could travel up to 240 kilometers per day just with space swap. And the distance from Sioux City to Haidu was less than 100 kilometers. A few minutes later, Xiao Ran arrived in Haidu. He appeared at the entrance of the residential complex occupied by the Black Dragon Society. These Japanese people were extremely ruthless. As soon as they discovered that the toxic hail could grant humans powers, they uniformly began to evolve. As a result, 90% of them died. It was clear they had already started because Xiao Ran could already see Otoshiri and his group. So familiar. The battle with Otoshiri back then could be said to be the toughest battle Xiao Ran had ever experienced, and it had even led to Wu Shanglong's sacrifice. But now, he smiled and walked into the complex. Dozens of Japanese men surrounded him, all smirking coldly. A Chinese pig? How dare he come here? Kill him. The Japanese men began to charge. The Japanese men began to fall. The Japanese men began to retreat. This naturally drew out Otoshiri and the other leaders. But it was only the 21st day of the apocalypse. Even the strongest, Otoshiri, only had 9 units of power. It was unknown whether he got it from killing people or from the golden snowflakes. Xiao Ran couldn't care less. Chinese man, why are you on a killing spree here? Otoshiri questioned. The relationship between China and Japan has always been good. Now that the cataclysm has come, shouldn't we work together to overcome it? Well said, don't say it again. Xiao Ran nodded. Since the relationship between our two countries is so good, how about you give me your daughter to use? Baka. Otoshiri had originally intended to lull Xiao Ran into a false sense of security, pretending to invite him inside to talk, then taking the opportunity to poison, ambush, and besiege him. He didn't expect Xiao Ran to be so blunt, clearly wanting to tear off all pretenses and fight. Oh, you're already cursing? Xiao Ran laughed heartily, activating space swap. In the next instant, there was an extra person in his arms. Otoshiri's daughter. With a thought from Xiao Ran, the woman became stark naked. You bastard. Otoshiri was enraged. How could he still hold back? He drew his sword and charged. Xiao Ran shook his head. You rape and pillage here, harming our women. What? When it comes to your daughter, she's innocent. He shook his head and casually threw her. Otoshiri's daughter was tossed out, and splat, she smashed against the wall, instantly becoming a blurry mess of flesh and blood. Otoshiri was so angry that smoke seemed to come from his orifices. This was his only daughter. Although with his current strong physical functions, it was still possible to have offspring, the probability was very, very small. His bloodline was cut off. He doted on his daughter. Everyone here in Japan had been forcibly required to evolve, but his daughter and wife had not. He had lied and said their evolution failed. Anyway, he was the leader. Who would dare question him? And now, his daughter was smashed to death right in front of him. He swung his sword. Xiao Ran smiled faintly. Bang, bang, bang. All the Japanese people's heads exploded, and they died. He walked through, like the grim reaper harvesting souls. This is good. Now Wu Shanglong doesn't have to die. Xiao Ran slaughtered every last Japanese person, also killed Shun Mingfei and Zhang Yuankai, directly snatched Shu Ruaji, snatched the foreign girl too, and brought them back to Sioux City. He He was in no mood to follow the normal timeline to win them over again, mainly because many people had been killed by him ahead of time, which had already severely affected the previous timeline. Xiao Ran didn't care in the slightest. He was already powerful enough. Why would he care about breaking the previous timeline's nodes? He returned to Sioux City overnight and carefully considered his plans. For now, there was really nothing much to do. Alright, take a trip to Vietnam and transplant that evolution fruit tree. Xiao Ran immediately set off, expertly finding his way to the villa complex occupied by Ruan Shing. Sure enough, this person had already moved here, and the fruit tree had also been planted. Xiao Ran naturally killed him without courtesy and transplanted the evolution fruit tree to Qingfeng Garden. This way, the women could take turns eating a fruit and possess 100 units of power in the early days of the apocalypse. How awesome was that? Alright, time to set off for Japan. And then America, Britain, France, Italy. There were so many fun places to go. He moved the women to Qingfeng Garden overnight. With his space domain open, moving house was of course an easy matter. Thus, the Chong family mansion in Qingfeng Garden immediately became lively. The women were all speechless. This guy was so promiscuous. How many days had it been since the cataclysm started? And he had already collected so many top-quality beauties. Xiao Ran, of course, used his future soldier spiel. It wasn't really that he was promiscuous. He had just compressed the timeline. But the women still rolled their eyes at him. You said it yourself, you only came back from 8 months in the future. In just that little time, you managed to pick up so many girls, and you still say you're not promiscuous? Xiao Ran naturally changed the subject. After leaving enough food and energy, he set off with Akai Sakari. Beauties of Japan, here I come. Xiao Ran was very much looking forward to it. The last time he went to Japan, it was too late in the timeline. The result was that, apart from Myo Aena and Hada Akane, the women were either protected by powerful individuals or were powerful themselves. Otherwise, who knows how many hands they had passed through. They would have long been spoiled. Give me a recommendation. Where should we go for our first stop? Xiao Ran asked. Akai Sakari thought seriously for a moment and said, I am a member of the Night Wind Group. The Night Wind Group is divided into 2 parts, the Killing Department and the Charm Department. The Killing Department is for assassins, and the Charm Department is for cultivating beautiful women. They're trained from a young age in how to please and serve men. The Charm Department is in a secret base with all female members, and there a large amount of food and water is stored, enough to last for a month. It's only been 21 days since the apocalypse started, so these people are definitely not dead. Xiao Ran nodded with pleasure. TSK, taking over an entire nest at once. I like it. He opened his space domain and began to teleport. His current domain only had a pitiful 49-meter radius, so let's say a 100-meter diameter. This was the maximum distance for a single teleport. Xiao Ran had already reduced the interval time to 0.5 seconds, making his speed 200 meters per second, not yet exceeding the speed of sound. Sigh. Even so, his speed reached 720 kilometers per hour. How long would it take to get from near Haidu to Nagasaki in Japan? The total distance was just over 800 kilometers, a little more than an hour. However, it took Xiao Ran 2 hours to reach Nagasaki. Because he rested on the way, the power consumption was still very large. After all, he only had a total of 20,000 units of power now, not comparable to his peak of over 200,000 units before. He found a hotel to rest for a while, planning to act when daylight came. Unexpectedly, there were still quite a few living people in the hotel. After all, this trip to Japan was only on the 21st day of the apocalypse. Most people could still struggle to survive. Xiao Ran swept his spatial perception over the area and couldn't help but reveal a wicked smile. A scene from a Japanese AV. He could experience it personally now. Xiao Ran did something extremely simple. He took out a hot pot and started cooking. Hot pot and barbecue. The aromas of these two are incredibly rich and can drift for miles. As the hot pot bubbled, the fragrance wafted into every corner of the hotel. Instantly, many people couldn't resist. They opened their doors and followed the scent. The first group to appear was 4 men who didn't look like good people at a glance. They were actually wearing suits, but over the suits, they had draped thick blankets, making for a bizarre look. These must be Japanese Yakuza. Xiao Ran could see clearly that 2 of them had tattoos on their necks. They had them on their backs and buttocks too. He saw this with his spatial perception. And they were carrying knives, 1 for each man. Hot pot. They're still hot pot now. We've struck it rich. The 4 men immediately surrounded them, completely ignoring Xiao Ran, the owner, and were about to push him aside to occupy the spot. Clang. Akai Sakari drew her dagger, looking full of killing intent. The four men were not flustered at all. One of them pulled aside his blanket, patted his side, and said, "Little lady, we have knives too." Greed flickered in his eyes. After they had eaten their fill, they would do. To this girl. This person was so nice, delivering food, and a beautiful woman. But Akai Sakari did not back down. Instead, she thrust her dagger forward. She was an assassin, trained from childhood to kill. She was proficient in both cold weapons and firearms. Puffed. With one stab, blood sprayed. One of the four men had his neck cleanly pierced by her. Blood gushed out, and the man fell to the ground with a wail, flailing his arms and legs as if having a seizure. Baka, seeing this, the remaining three men finally realized that although this woman was beautiful, her skills were also astonishing. They all drew their knives and charged at Akai Sakari. Compared to pleasure, their own lives were clearly more precious. Akai Sakari was fearless and fought the three men. You must know she was now a powered individual of physical type. Although she only had 1 unit of power, her strength was more than 10 times that of an ordinary person. Coupled with the training she received from childhood, she was now a human-shaped weapon. Puffed, puffed, puffed. In just a few moves, the other three men also had their necks stabbed and were lying on the ground. After flailing like fish for a while, they eventually died from blood loss. At this time, more and more people came from various floors, both men and women, but basically no old people or children. They all stared at the hot pot with greedy eyes, constantly swallowing their saliva. If not for the 4 corpses lying on the ground, they probably would have already rushed up to snatch the food. Xiao Ran smiled faintly and said, "It's simple if you want to eat. Just sleep with me. However, I don't want any ugly ones." Akai Sakari immediately translated for him. In fact, as soon as Xiao Ran spoke, these Japanese people showed looks of disdain. After hearing Akai Sakari's translation, they all became furious. A lowly Chinese person actually wanted to sleep with the beautiful women of their Yamato nation? Dream on. Naturally, a man took the lead and said coldly, "Kill him, and this food is ours." All right, they had all come down with weapons. Some had fruit knives, some had dismantled tables and sharpened a table leg into a short spear, and some held frying pans. In short, no one came empty-handed. Since the apocalypse began, the kind and naive had long since died. These people charged forward, but they all quickly stopped in their tracks. Because Xiao Ran had pulled out a handgun. It's fake, right? Someone said with a trembling voice. Xiao Ran couldn't understand them, but he could guess. He raised his hand and fired a shot. Bang! That person fell backward, a bloody hole on his forehead. This caused a wave of screams, but strangely, very few people ran away. They were too hungry. If they didn't eat soon, they would starve to death. Having reached this point, what else did they have to fear? After only a moment's hesitation, the first woman stood up. "I'll sleep with you." "No!" The man beside her immediately shouted. "Keiko, you can't do this." The woman didn't even look at him, just walked towards the hot pot. Xiao Ran glanced at her. Not bad, a 70 out of 100. Actually, she didn't meet his current standards, but who could resist a Japanese girl? "Let's play." Xiao Ran smiled and made a gesture of invitation. The woman immediately sat down with joy, picked up chopsticks, dipped a piece of meat into the hot pot to cook. When she fished out the fragrant slice of meat and put it in her mouth, she trembled with excitement. She truly thought she would never eat meat again in this life, let alone a steaming hot slice of meat. With her, as an example, more women naturally followed suit. "I'll sleep with you." "I'll sleep with you too." One by one, women eagerly came forward, all looking at Xiao Ran with pleading eyes. Xiao Ran picked and chose. The passing mark for a beauty was 60, so they had to at least reach 60. It was just for fun, especially with Japanese girls. He didn't have very high requirements, but they had to be at least beautiful. He picked out 11. The rest were either too old, too ugly, or their figures were out of shape. The 11 women gathered around the hot pot. You take a bite, I take a bite, pushing and shoving, almost knocking the pot over. Xiao Ran didn't care at all, just watched their disheveled state. After eating for over an hour, these women were finally full, each one satisfied. Xiao Ran smiled faintly. Then let the activities begin. A night passed. Xiao Ran only slept for an hour, because he was busy. In the morning, he first fished for a cluster of strange matter with a little sapling, a good harvest of 1,500 units. Then he and Akai Sakari left. The secret base Akai Sakari mentioned was not far from Nagasaki, just over 100 kilometers further north. Xiao Ran leisurely walked there, killing anyone he saw, like a demon. Akai Sakari had no reaction. Not to mention she had completely submitted to Xiao Ran. Even if she hadn't, how much conscience and patriotism could you expect from an assassin? Besides, she wasn't pure-blooded Japanese. Her father was an American, and she was proud of his heritage. So even if Xiao Ran said he was going to blow up Japan, she would probably just marvel at his abilities. It was only the 22nd day of the apocalypse, and most people could still stubbornly survive, but wherever Xiao ran past, he left no survivors. It was a pity that the internet was down now. Otherwise, it would have been great to publicize his fearsome reputation. Being seen as a demon by the Japanese would naturally make him a hero in China. 2 hours later, Xiao Ran and Akai Sakari arrived in front of a manor. The secret base was here. The defenses here were very strict. Not only were the outer walls high, but they were also topped with barbed wire connected to high-voltage electricity. Of course, with the power out now, there was no high-voltage current. But given the current weather conditions, who would come to such a desolate place? It was truly desolate here, with mountains for 10 kilometers in every direction. In the apocalypse, without cars or other means of transport, could anyone possibly come here? So, whether the barbed wire was still electrified, did it matter? Xiao Ran scanned with his spatial perception, and a smile couldn't help but appear on his lips. There were people inside, many living people, and they were all great beauties. With a thought, he and Akai Sakari were already inside the manor. Behind the main gate was a huge garden, and at the end of it was an enormous European-style castle, 6 stories high. Each floor probably had at least 50 rooms, so the entire building was actually square-shaped, with another garden in the center. Inside the entire castle, there were about 200 people, mostly young and beautiful women, along with some who were also female, but much older. This was the charm department of the Night Wind Group, used for cultivating mistresses. Cultivating mistresses for high-ranking Japanese officials and tycoons, then using these mistresses to pass back intelligence or whisper in their ears, helping the Night Wind Group gain huge profits in business. Xiao Ran said, if they were so capable, shouldn't this Night Wind Group be the wealthiest force in Japan? How did Tai International end up being it? Forget it. Why should I care so much? I'm here to play with Japanese girls. After I've had enough fun, I'll just blow up Mount Fuji again. As they crossed the garden, Xiao Ran noticed that someone in the castle had seen him and Akai Sakari. Someone had even taken out a gun and was aiming. Akai Sakari was an assassin and most sensitive to danger. Plus, now that she was a powered individual, she immediately sensed something was wrong and said, Master, there's danger. Xiao Ran smiled faintly. It's fine, keep walking. Bang! Just then, a bullet was fired. The bullet was even faster than the speed of sound. A sniper rifle. Xiao Ran was calm, casually plucking the bullet out of the air. It was hot to the touch, but his body, having been tempered by his power, was so ridiculously strong that such a temperature only felt slightly warm to him. He looked up, his gaze fixed on a certain window. The sniper was horrified, feeling as if Xiao Ran's gaze was staring straight at her. From so far away, and I'm hiding behind a window. How did you see me? In her shock, she was about to fire a second shot. However, that was the last thought she would ever have in her life. Dead. The bullet in Xiao Ran's hand had already disappeared. He had just flicked it, and the bullet, accelerated by space compression, gained a velocity far exceeding that of a fired round, directly blowing the sniper's head off. He walked unhurriedly to the castle's main entrance. However, the great doors were tightly shut, clearly not welcoming him. Xiao Ran casually waved his hand, and the great doors opened. Under his space domain, what door wouldn't open for him? He and Akai Sakari walked in, only to see a large group of people already standing in the main hall, all looking at them with wary expressions. Hey, you're Akai. A woman in her 40s stared at Akai Sakari and suddenly stepped out from the crowd. I remember you. Akai Sakari bowed to her. Teacher Matsushita. She had indeed spent some time in the charm department when she was young, but she was quickly scouted by the killing department due to her agility, and from then on, she walked a completely different path in life. Teacher Matsushita, whose name was Matsushita Fu, frowned and said, Don't you know that men are strictly forbidden from setting foot in here? Akai Sakari laughed loudly. Teacher Matsushita, what time is it now? It's questionable whether the Night Wind Group even exists anymore, and you still want to sacrifice yourself for them? Besides, standing before you is my master. My great master wants this place, wants everything here. That is your honor. Hurry up and kneel down to express your gratitude. Hearing her words, all the women found it incredible. You dare betray the organization. Matsushita, Kaoru, shouted angrily. The others echoed her, all glaring at Akai Sakari. Xiao Ran couldn't understand what they were chattering about, but he didn't need to care. With a thought, his entire body was already levitating in the air. Oh my God! Seeing this, all the women were utterly shocked. Some of them directly went weak at the knees and knelt. A god! They were seeing a living god. Xiao Ran smiled faintly and said, "I say, let there be light." Instantly, a bright sphere of light appeared above the main hall, shining with 1,000 rays, like a small sun. Akai Sakari immediately translated, otherwise these foolish girls wouldn't know what their master was saying. "I say, let there be food," Xiao Ran said again. Instantly, a large amount of food appeared on the ground, steaming hot. There was meat and vegetables, soups and stews, and a large quantity of fresh fruit. Oh my God! These women didn't even need Akai Sakari to translate to guess what Xiao Ran was saying. More people knelt down. In the face of a miracle, the organization's brainwashing immediately crumbled. Xiao Ran nodded with a smile. Too easy. However, a few middle-aged women still looked rebellious, their eyes darting around, clearly with ill intentions. These were time bombs. Xiao Ran waved his hand, and these women flew into the air. "Those who disrespect me commit blasphemy. Death!" Bang! These women immediately turned into a rain of blood, which merged into a single ball. Xiao Ran waved his hand again, and swoosh, this large ball of blood vanished into thin air. The women shivered, their reverence growing even stronger. They had actually been continuously brainwashed, but the lesson they had been taught was to serve and die for the organization. But having been brainwashed before, it was very easy to re-brainwash them. For example, after Xiao Ran displayed power like that of God, they directly transferred their allegiance. Xiao Ran descended and let the women divide the food. Instantly, all the women were overjoyed. Although the food stored here was plentiful after so many days, it was mostly eaten. The main thing was that they were tired of eating the same food every day. And what delicacies did Japan have? Now, with Chinese cuisine laid out before them, who wasn't drooling? Xiao Ran, on the other hand, took the tablet computer handed to him by Akai Sakari, which contained the information of everyone here. The roster had a total of 201 names, perfectly matching the 201 young women here. The charm department also divided these women into different grades based on quality, and in the first tier, there was only one person named Furukawa Yuna. Xiao Ran opened her profile, and just by looking at the photo, he couldn't help but be moved. This woman's looks were in no way inferior to Myo Aena's. It was just that Myo Aena was a fusion of intellect and charm, while this woman, she was full of a fragile aura, making one feel an instinctive pity for her. With this woman as a mistress, what man could resist? That one glance back, so pitiful and lovely, who wouldn't love her? Even Xiao Ran's heart fluttered. With a thought, he had already located Furukawa Yuna with his spatial perception. Looking through a screen only showed a photo, with no sense of depth or comparison, but seeing her in person was different. She was about 174 centimeters tall. Not only was she considered tall among Japanese women, but she wouldn't even seem short when compared to Europeans. Her figure was truly amazing, with manga-like legs that were long, straight, and so pale they seemed to glow. Her buttocks were round and perky, and her waist cinched in dramatically, making Xiao Ran wonder if she had undergone surgery to remove ribs. No, she hadn't. All 24 ribs were there. Hiss, what an incredible figure. Her long hair draped over her shoulders, perfectly matching Xiao Ran's image of a goddess. Her pretty face was flawless, comparable only to Xia Chuchio and Myo Aena. Xiao Ran was curious. In the previous timeline, what was this woman's final fate? This place was remote and rarely visited, so would she have starved to death? Or even been eaten by the other women? After all, no matter how beautiful she was, she wouldn't gain any sympathy in the eyes of other women. Master, upon seeing Xiao Ran, Furukawa Yuna immediately knelt and paid her respects. This was the etiquette of Japanese women when facing their master or husband. Of course, women in modern families wouldn't do this. Only prominent households would observe these customs. Xiao Ran pinched her chin, making her face him. So breathtakingly beautiful. Satisfying, extremely satisfying. Furukawa Yuna was originally meant to be sent to the new Prime Minister of Japan. If not for the sudden arrival of the apocalypse, she would have been sent away in 3 days. What luck! With nothing better to do, Xiao Ran opened the tablet and looked again. There were many more in the second tier, a total of 9. Judging by their looks, they were all above 90 points, and each had a hot and alluring figure. The shortest was 165 centimeters, and the tallest was 182 centimeters, a standard model's build. Xiao Ran decided to have the women here start their evolution quickly. If they didn't evolve now, they would when the purple moon arrived anyway. So why not do it earlier? The 201 people were divided into 10 batches, 1 batch per day, ensuring that Xiao Ran could manage. Most importantly, with so many girls here, it would take him some days to play with each of them. After marking all the Japanese girls as his, Xiao Ran lived a life like an emperor. He had to admit, after years of training, these Japanese girls were truly amazing at serving men. Xiao Ran thought that even the emperors of ancient times had it no better. The third tier had 57 people, the fourth had 82, and the rest were in the fifth tier. But even in the fifth tier, their looks were around 80 points, and their body types were diverse from G-cup bombshells to A-cup washboards. It was said that this type also had a considerable market. Xiao Ran was speechless. People actually liked A-cup washboards? At least he felt nothing for them. Xiao Ran was so happy here, he forgot to leave. It was satisfying, truly so satisfying, with new experiences every day. In a flash, 20 days passed, and all the women here had completed their evolution. With Xiao Ran's help, 180 out of 201 had successfully evolved, while the remaining 21 were still ordinary people. They would have to rely on the golden snowflakes or wait for the purple moon's arrival for the universal evolution. And Xiao Ran had gained a full 30,000 units of power. As the little sapling grew day by day, the strange matter he could hook also increased. In the future, it wouldn't be impossible for him to gain 10,000 units of power in a single day. Xiao Ran decided to leave. He only took 2 people with him. One was Akai Sakari, his translator, and the other was Furukawa Yuna. This woman was truly delicious, and Xiao Ran was quite addicted. Where next? Akai Sakari suggested going to Fukuoka because she had a college classmate there who was very, very beautiful. Why did she go to college? Don't assassins need to study? Besides, she usually needed an identity to use as cover. She and his classmate, named Ikitani Reina, were good friends, what would be called besties in China. They were inseparable at school, so Akai Sakari was 100% sure that Ikitani Reina had never had a boyfriend. And even after graduation, the 2 women often called and messaged each other, and Ikitani Reina never mentioned she was in a relationship. So, she was most likely still a virgin. However, they still had to pray that she hadn't been snatched by some scumbag or sold her body to survive. Xiao Ran was a little speechless. An assassin is an assassin. Is this how you look out for your best friend? But Akai Sakari was righteous. In this world, only Master can give her the best conditions. And Master is so powerful, it's her good fortune that he might take a liking to her. You have great awareness, a very promising future. Xiao Ran was very satisfied.